going live. And we're live. Dum, 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 dum. There we go. Hello, folks. Just popped on a wee bit early as always, just to check that we've got green for the sound machine and that the picture's okay. Getting a little bit of picture fluctuation there. So if anybody's there, say hello. And we'll get cracking at 10 o'clock as usual. Pardon me. Yeah, it's been an interesting wee week from us. I actually picked up some new books and things based on, well, interestingly enough, I want to try and get some of the books that everybody recommended to me on the science fiction day there, and I wasn't able to get a single one of them, would you believe? But contrary to what I'd said about never finding a Werner Vinge book in a Northern Ireland bookstore, I managed to get one. But this is spending my book token, so I'll have to have a wee run through with what I've picked up. Got a couple of nice wee interesting things in a replacement there. But there's 10 o'clock, folks, so I will say hello. I'm Doc Sloan. Thank you very much for joining me, and this is my science fiction station, also known as the Doghouse, and here we're at Chapter 21 of our Children of Dune book club. There's Sootpot. Hi, Sootpot. How you doing? Hope you're keeping well, sir. Good to see you. Oh dear, yes, I'm off with the new year, I suppose, and all of this stuff, and I'm feeling a lot better than I have been for the last 3 months. So I've been a bit of a mess, folks, and the episodes have been very, very coffee. You're good, thanks. Yeah, I'm a lot better, Sootpot. I hope you're good too, sir. I'm a lot better. I've had a rough few months I had a bad lung infection, and I inhaled a whole pile of bad things way back in September. And in fact, I'm back to my normal cough, I think. Finally, but it's taken some time. I've just been throwing the lemon and the honey and just medicating myself, But no, I'm good. Thank you very much, and I'm glad to hear that you are too. Just before we get going tonight, I'll show you my little quick, because we're always all things science fiction. Just what I picked up this week. I finally managed to finish George R.R. Martin's is it Fire and Blood? Got through that the other day, and something I'm actually going to mention in it within this chapter today is there's a character in there that's very similar to the preacher. We'll have a wee bit of a natter about that when we get there. Just very quickly to show you what I've picked up this week. We're just chatting away. I managed to pick up this. I've been looking forward to this. I've seen a bunch of these brought out lately. British Library, Tales of the Weird, The Ways of Ghosts, and Other Rare Tales by Ambrose Bierce. So it's got some crackers in here, in particular, the two that I was really wanting, and they're both in this collection. Were the very famous An Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge. If anybody's not familiar with this, it's if you go back to the old Twilight Zones, the Rod Serling Twilight Zones, one of the very later episodes, there's a very special episode of the Twilight Zone, and it is gets a particular introduction by Rod Serling. It is An Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge. It's brilliant. If you haven't seen it, check it out. But in particular, I'm kind of looking for the stuff that's connecting up to the King in Yellow stories at the minute. And we have an inhabitant of Caracasa. So I'm looking forward to we've got lots of these wee sort of short stories at the minute. And as I said, I was just saying, I picked up a copy of Werner Vinge. It's True Names. Having a wee look at this. This is just what can I get in the bookshop with my book tokens, and having a wee read through that. And again, an author I'm quite looking forward to reading. And I picked up a replacement copy, I suppose. I've never owned this. I read it in the library when I was a kid. So this copy of Rendezvous with Rama, which apparently is Denis Villeneuve's next film. And then this is what just show you very quickly what I'm reading at the minute. I also picked up this, which has been on my radar for a little while. Harlan Ellison's Greatest Hits. And this is fantastic. Unfortunately, there's another foreword by Neil Gaiman, but it has a good introduction by Cassandra. Is that Cassandra Caw? It's been edited by J. Michael Straczynski, who's of course Babylon 5 fame. And I was reading the first two stories in this, and the first one is Repentant Harlequin, the TikTok Man. Said the TikTok Man, and having just read through it, I've read that before. And we're talking about how you remember things. It was the jelly babies. The word jelly babies just slapped into my head and reminded me of it. And I've just finished I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream. So just some new science fiction. Having finished that, the book that I'm going to be getting on with, I've decided to get through books, is this one, Yukio Mishima's Beautiful Star, which I'm on to the second chapter. It's not a particularly big book. So there we go. So just some interesting stuff. I suppose two of those are the authors that we were talking about. So, but I was really looking for China Mival's Kraken and a couple of others that were talked about there on our science fiction day that we were on last week with. So he's long-winded in my opinion, but fun. Nice. Well, yeah, some good stuff. I'm looking forward to it. And there's stuff there that I've read and stuff there that I haven't read. If you see what I mean. And it's just making me laugh. It's just it's memory, isn't it? There's an awful lot of science fiction stories I read probably, before I was a teen. If you see, I mean, I read a lot of the teen, but I started reading this stuff very, very young, and it's a memory thing these days. So I'm very pleased to say, oh God, I've read that. That was fun to jog my memory, but it took a wee while. There's Carlos Cosellas and hey Doc, did you ever see J. Michael's Rising Stars? I didn't know. I think the main thing I know him through is Babylon 5. Really, which I'm a big fan of, to be honest with you. I'm not a big fan of the final season, but there were lots of problems with that, if you like. And I certainly wouldn't blame J. Michael Straczynski for it, but I think Babylon 5 is an excellent show. And but no, I didn't see that. And I know he's didn't he win an Oscar, I think, on a screenplay or something? But I know he used to work on Murder, She Wrote, but I haven't seen much of his other work, Carlos, to be honest with you. But as always, where's my wee scribble book? I'll check that out. Where is my scribble book? It's a good question. There it is. Stuff for recommendations and do. But no, I very much enjoyed Babylon 5. I thought it was very well written, showed a good heart, but I thought certainly the apex of it, right in the middle. Is it Severed Dreams? Is a fantastic episode. I'm scribbling all sorts of things down here, but I'll check that out. Where's I'm never lacking a pen here. Here we go. Rising Stars. Rising Stars by J. Straczynski. How I got into Babylon 5 was that I went down to the local, video shop. Is before DVD, and they had all the I don't know, but the first two seasons in there on video, and I started renting them out, and I tended to notice that nobody else was renting them out. And after a few months and watched them all, I went into the the video shop and asked the guy, "Do you want to sell them to me?" And he did. So I bought them all from him. Got a whole chunk of them for not much money. And then I just started buying them as they came out. And then ultimately I had all the videos and then got rid of them, just got the DVDs just to get some bookshelf space, But no, I haven't seen Rising Stars. Let's have a look. And there's Cynthia saying, hi Doc, hi all. Mival's Kraken is a favourite. Also look at his Perdido Street Station. Thank you, Cynthia. I was saying that I'd seen a bunch of his books on the shelf, and that some of the size of a couple of them had kind of put me off, but I had read City in the City and loved it. And so it was Kraken was the one that was recommended. I went there to get it. The only book by him that they had in the bookshop was City in the City, sadly. But it was just book tokens. I had to go to a particular shop to spend them. But yes, indeed, I was hoping to get it. Actually, to be honest, Kraken was the one that I was going to go for. But I quite like his. I really related a lot to the City in the City. And Carlos Cosellas is saying it's from Marvel Comics. Not bad. Might not be that easy for me to get. There's Chaya Rivka saying, Shalom, all. Hope everyone's well. Hiya, Chaya. Thanks very much for joining us. Yeah, it's a happy new year to you all, by the way, if we haven't said so already. Hope you're all keeping well, folks. We've got a real fun chapter tonight. But there you go. So just a little bit of housekeeping. And let me just get organized here. But yeah, also, by the way, I'm hopefully getting a few things sorted this week. And one of them's going to be at the weekend, my correspondence. So anybody's not heard from me, I'll be getting back in touch with you. If anybody's, a few of you have been looking to have a wee chat with me. So I'll just say it out loud now. If any of you want to email me in regards to a Zoom chat, the times that I'm not available are between 3 p.m. and 9 p.m. Monday to Friday, and if GMT. And if anybody wants to have a wee natter with me about anything to do with science fiction, just a chat, as a few of you have said, pardon me, then send me an email with a time and a date, and I'll see you there, as long as it's outside that range of times. So I can't do between 3 p.m. and 9 p.m. GMT, but anything else, that's Monday to Friday, and I can't really do it on a Tuesday, obviously, because I'm doing this show at night. But if if anybody does want to natter with me, fire me an email there at the station, sciencefictionstation@gmail.com, and we'll arrange it, because it's a good fun thing to do. Had a fantastic chat with Sootpot, had a really good chat or two with Cara Kennedy as well. So it's something that I've quite enjoyed doing, and I think a few of you want to interact a wee bit with this stuff, and yeah, hopefully Julian as well, if he's out there, get in touch, fire me an email. I'm available, basically, is what I'm saying. New Year's a wee bit quiet for me, starting to pick up a bit of business, but it's a good time. So there we go. It's been an interesting week or so. Chapter 21, I think I put up, is it conspiracy theories and ferrets? The ferrets made me laugh a lot in this chapter. It's an interesting chapter, and I suppose we get to see how much more unhinged Alia is becoming. There's actually a comment from Duncan Idaho in this chapter where he's actually wondering if both Alia and Irulan are insane. I like this chapter. It's a little bit of an odd one to work through, I thought, and I'd be love to hear your opinions on this one, folks. We'll start off. Let's get the epigraph out of the way. It's quite a chunky one. Let's go with it. It's the assumption that humans exist within an essentially impermanent universe, taken as an operational precept, demands that the intellect become a totally aware, balancing instrument. But the intellect cannot react thus without involving the entire organism. Such an organism may be recognized by its burning, driving behavior, and thus it is with a society treated as organism. But here we encounter an old inertia. Societies move to the goading of ancient reactive impulses. They demand permanence. Any attempt to display the universe of impermanence arouses rejection patterns, fear, anger, and despair. Then how do we explain the acceptance of prescience? Simply, the giver of prescient visions, because he speaks of an absolute permanent realization, may be greeted with joy by humankind, even while predicting the most dire events. And this is taken from the Book of Leto, again after Hark al-Ada. Let me get those precious fluids. Now, this is an interesting thing. I'd love to hear your opinions on it. I've tried to pick it apart as best I can. I don't agree with everything that's said in it, but the assumption that humans exist in an essentially impermanent universe, and the word essentially there, taken as operational precepts, demands that the intellect becomes a totally aware, balancing instrument. So there's an axiom there that I think that we take this as a given, that the humans exist in an essentially impermanent universe, that we could run with that as an axiom. Demands that the intellect becomes a totally aware, balancing instrument. Now, I think a lot of this is to do with Duncan Idaho and the Mentat process, if you like. And it says, but the intellect cannot react thus, in other words, being a totally aware, balancing instrument, without involving the entire organism. So to me, that's mind and body, I think. Or if you want to add a soul into that one, mind, body, and soul. Such an organism may be recognized by its burning, driving behavior. Okay, fair enough. And again, we have this thing where we're going to look at society as an organism. Now, we talked about that with the previous chapter, I think. And essentially what an organism is. But if you want to look at society as an undividable thing, if you like, as one entity, as a single organism, fair enough, if you like. I think it's a very bad way to look at society. But I think at the same time, what we have here is part of what you like inductive reasoning, if you see what I mean. I'll have a wee chat about that in a bit. So if we treat a society, thus it is with a society treated as an organism. So in other words, the society cannot become a totally aware balancing instrument, if you like, unless it involves its entire organism. So what the entirety of the society, if you like, is how I'm reading this. And then we get this, but here we encounter an old inertia. And this is where I start to disagree with Frank. It says societies move to the goading of ancient reactive impulses. Fair enough. It's a very general statement. They demand permanence. And I've written, no, they don't. And I'll explain that in a minute. Any attempt to display the universe of impermanence arouses rejection patterns. And again, I've written, does it? And I've written, no. Here are the rejection patterns: fear, anger, and despair. I tend to take despair as the exact. Oh, I'll have a wee chat about it. But despair is not. Despair tends to have, I think, a religious connotation to me. Fear, one thing. Anger, yes. Despair. If you read Hopkins, he would tell you that. Sorry, Jared Manley Hopkins. He would say despair is the absence of God. To a spiritual person, it's the absolute lowest point, if you like. But that's a particular religious connotation on it, I think. But just the despair of something's just to be devoid of all hope, I think. And then we get this. How do we explain the acceptance of prescience? How do we accept foreknowledge in society? And I think we have plenty of examples of this in the world. And Frank tells us simply, the giver of prescient visions, because he speaks of an absolute permanent realization, may be greeted with joy by humankind, even while predicting the most dire events. I don't necessarily think that we would greet some, a prediction of bad events with joy. But the reason, just to let you know, that I'm disagreeing with Frank, and I'll check your comments on this in a wee second, folks. Societies move to the goading of ancient reactive impulses. Well, let's go to ancient societies. Let's talk about Athens, for example. They demand permanence. No. Constant flux, constant learning, constant desire to investigate and understand the world and to rebuild it anew around themselves, I think. Any attempt to display the universe of impermanence arouses rejection patterns. Not at all. Not necessarily. And I think that's a very 20th century view point on society and applying ancient kind of ideas to it. If you look at ancient societies and how they grow, but particularly the Athenians and the Greeks in general, I think that the desire to understand their world, to learn more about it, is the motivating factor that moves them forward. It's ignorance of the universe, if you like, that arises fear, anger, despair, and all sorts of other things. So it's a very interesting thing, but I do think that this applies to. We're going to see Duncan Idaho's inductive reasoning process with him, and I think that this is about a little bit to do with that. The inductive reasoning, I suppose you probably know mostly about Sherlock Holmes with deductive reasoning. Inductive reasoning is where you take a set of details and generalize them, basically. Kind of the opposite of the Sherlock Holmes thing, I think, But it's a tricky one. I'm going to go to your comments straight away, folks, just to see what you think. Now, let's see. China's saying if prescience is substituted for the prophet, then it can be seen as a scientific view versus religious view of society. Impermanent universe has a God creator. It was the other bit is the universe impermanent or is it permanent? Supot saying aye. If you have no creator God, then yes, fear, anger, and despair easily set in. Cynthia saying, I think of a balancing instrument as something subtle, poised like a tightrope walker, someone who would not want a rigid rope as in permanence, but rather one that can always be responded to. Excellent, guys. I really just love to hear your opinions on this little bit here. Let's have a wee look just at the details again. A totally aware balancing. The intellect must become a totally aware balancing instrument. And I don't know. I was kind of thinking about that. Is that not what the intellect is in a sense? But it depends. Totally aware. I don't know. It's an interesting little thing. The intellect cannot react us without involving the entire organism, mind and body. Such an organism must be recognized by its burning, driving behavior. And thus it is with the society treated as an organism. Now, it could be recognized by its burning, driving behavior, but here we encounter an old inertia. That's interesting. If you have no creator God, then yes, fear, anger, despair easily set. And I've got none. I think I get the idea. Prescience is substitute for the prophet. Yeah, very much so. Prescience is foreknowledge, isn't it? And it's not quite the same as prophecy. Can be seen. That's a good point. Scientific view versus religious view of society. Impermanent universe has a God creator. If you have no creator God, then yes, fear, anger, and despair easily set in. Yeah, I think that's the thing. When I was talking about Hopkins there, I think I've mentioned him a fair few times. He's one of my favorite poets. Um, when he wrote his sonnets of desolation and in that state of despair, from it's almost very bipolar with him because he's such a joyous, happy-go-lucky kind of nature poet, if you like. It is because of that. In fact, let me see if I can remember this. He wrote a poem called "To Seem the Stranger Lies My Lot." Let me see. That'll be the first line of it. Let me see if I can remember it. To seem the stranger lies my lot, my life. Brothers and sisters dear, father and mother are in Christ not near. And then I think it says, I am at a third removed. Let me just look it up, actually. I don't want to misquote him. And I'll just tell you what the third removed is that he's removed from God and, well, England, actually. Let me see. To seem stranger. There we are. Yeah. Let's see how I did. In years since I looked at that. To seem the stranger lies my lot, my life among strangers. Father and mother dear, brothers and sisters are in Christ not near. I didn't do too well. I got it jumbled up a bit. It's been a long time since I read that poem. And he, my peace, my parting, sword and strife. England, whose honour, oh, all my heart woos, wife to my creating thought, would neither hear me were I plead, nor do I weary of idle a being but by where wars are rife. I am in Ireland now out of a third remove. There you go. Not but in all removes I can kind love but give and get. Only what word wisest my heart breeds, dark heavens baffling ban, bars or hell's spell thwarts. This to hoard unheard, heard unheeded, leaves me a lonely began. There you go. The desolation that he's feeling, if you like, there is separation from family, separation from country. This is third removed, if you like. To seem the stranger is what he's talking. And then the third one is that at that point he's separated from God. That's what creates a state of despair and leads to the sonnets of desolation. I'll have to read that again. My memory, I thought I was quite good at memory. I memorized a lot of his poems when I was young. Obviously not that one so well. I didn't do too bad though. Pardon me. The intellect, China's saying the intellect is already a balancing system. That's where I was going with flashes of insight, reasoning, and cogitating, sensory inputs and emotions. The intellect balances, governs all in a healthy person. But it's whether you're consciously aware and participating of the balance required, in my honest opinion. It is. I was actually thinking about this in that sense, and I think I agree with you there. And the only thing that I think that this is adding to that is that the intellect cannot react thus without involving the entire organism, I think. And as much as that's the case, that the body has to do that too, I think. And I'm a person that's really bad with that. I'm told that I live in my head a lot. But at a certain point, my wife kind of had to retrain me in terms of breathing and things. I'm very bad at running my body. But there we go. That's excellent. Thank you very much for that, guys. If you were told the world's going to end, just for the last bit, I suppose, the giver of prescient visions, because he speaks of an absolute permanent realization, may be greeted with joy by humankind, even while predicting the most dire events. I suppose it depends. The word vision there, I suppose. But we do have prescience. We do have foreknowledge of things. And I don't know, if you were told tomorrow that we're going to get hit by an asteroid at the end of the year and all life, I don't think you'd be particularly happy about it. And I don't think you'd greet the person who told you about it with joy. I think we'd either fall apart or do our best just to ignore it. But at the same time, we actually have so many existential threats, and we tend to ignore them. Get on with it, if you see what I mean. And I think it's a very interesting attitude, Used to be a thing. I was thinking about existential, just the fact that we all live with about 9 or 10 countries in the world that have enough nuclear weapons to wipe all of us out. The ultimate terrorists, if you like. I think, and I'm living in one. There's nuclear weapons in the UK. And what do we do about it? Nothing. We just get on with it, don't we? Just knowing that could happen at any time, and all it takes is one madman to do it. It's interesting, but at the same time, I grew up in a culture with bombs and guns and shootings and kneecappings and all sorts of that thing. When I was younger, we used to go up to Belfast every couple of weeks to do a bit of shopping, and particularly a couple of big bombs had gone off at a certain time. And we turned up one day, just as an example of our how sort of blasé we would be around bombs and things like that. Would be used to my friends, if we went up to Belfast and there was a bomb blast on Friday, we'd be going half the town, all the windows would be taken out, like £1,000 bomb or something like that, and we'd just go home and come back the next day for the bomb blast sales. And and that was our attitude. There'll be sales tomorrow. Let's go home and come back tomorrow. And all the glass going through, you just to go in and get your clothes. You could buy like Levi jeans for £1 because they had a little bit of glass had ripped through them or something like that. It was very funny. And I remember once we went up to go to Belfast, there was a big £1,000 bomb went off. I think it was near a bar that's, I don't know, it's changed names that many times. It used to be called the Parliament. And we arrived at the bar and it was gone. There was just nothing left of it. And that a shockwave had rippled down. So we walked all the way down the town to another bar called the Capstan. And we got there, everything had had its windows taken out. I was just, come back tomorrow. That kind of thing. I suppose those are more examples of bombs where nobody was hurt, I think, But that kind of attitude. But sorry, I've gone off on one here, folks. Anyway, that's our very interesting little epigraph. And again, running with this society as an organism. And I think we're going to see how that relates to Duncan Idaho's thought process here. So let's get cracking. Thank you very much, guys. I much appreciate it. Okay, so here we go. Right. Alia, this is Alia. It's like fighting in the dark, Alia said. She paced the council chamber in angry strides, moving from the tall silver draperies, which softened the morning sun at the eastern windows, to the divans grouped beneath decorated wall panels. Sorry, it's my bad handwriting. At the room's opposite end. So our location is the council chamber. Our time is morning. Her sandals crossed spice fiber rugs, parquet wood, tiles of giant garnet, and once more rugs. At last, she stood over Irulan and Idaho, who sat facing each other on divans of grey whale fur. And I've just written here that the last time we sort of saw Idaho and Alia, I've just written here that Idaho said, "Goodbye, beloved." In Children, sorry, it's my book, my notes, chapter 19, notes 61 and 62. And bear with me a wee second. So, just to backtrack to that, let me see. Did I write the right thing down? Bear with me a wee second. 61 and 62, volume 2. That's not the right notes at all. Hang on. Bear with me a wee second, just to check. Oh, right, sorry. That's my, I know what's happened there. That's my bad handwriting again. It's notes 67 and 68. Sorry, bear with me a wee second when I fix that. Oops. Must have got distracted there. Back in chapter 19. Now she believes I will kill Lady Jessica, he thought, and again he said, "Goodbye, beloved." And she did not hear the finality in his voice, even kissed him lightly as he left. And she kind of got the sense, certainly I did with him, and he's brushing the tears and all. Back then, that was it. He was away, but he's back. So Idaho had resisted returning from Tabar, but she had sent peremptory orders. The abduction of Jessica was more important than ever now, but it had to wait. Idaho's mentat perceptions were required. So this is why she wants him back. She wants him to basically do his mentat thing on this situation. And here we go. Alia, this is Alia. These things are cut from the same pattern, Alia said. They stink of a far-reaching plot. Perhaps not, Irulan ventured, but she glanced questioningly at Idaho. Alia's face lapsed into an undisguised sneer. How could Irulan be that innocent? Unless... And then we get her thoughts here, I suppose. So that was her thought. Alia bent a sharp and questioning stare onto the princess. Irulan wore a simple black Abba robe which matched the shadows in her spice indigo eyes. Her blonde hair was tied in a tight coil at the nape of her neck, accenting a face thinned and toughened by years on Arrakis. She still retained the haughtiness she'd learned in the court of her father Shaddam IV, and Alia often felt that this prideful attitude could make the thoughts of could mask the thoughts of a conspirator. So I've just written down here: is this her paranoia coming out here? And it's interesting, I suppose. Within this chapter, we'll get, I think probably Alia thinks everybody's out together, and she's suspected them. At this point, I think she is suspicious of Irulan, but by the end of this chapter, not so much of Idaho. Okay. So Alia bent a sharp and questioning stare. Oh, sorry, I've read that bit. Apologies. I often felt that this prideful attitude could mask the thoughts of a conspirator. Idaho lounged in the black and green uniform of an Atreides house guard, no insignia. It was an affectation which was secretly resented by many of Alia's actual guards, especially the Amazons, who gloried in insignia of office. They did not like the plain presence of the Gola, swordmaster Mentat, the more so because he was the husband of their mistress. That's quite interesting. So it's a question of why do they secretly resent him? And we're sort of told that it's because, again, that he doesn't wear an insignia, no rank. Though he is a sword master, I suppose, which I thought was a rank in itself. But they did not like the plain presence of the Gola. They gloried in the insignia of office. It sounds like, rank and medals and things like that. The more, the better. You can see it often within the military. These guys that come in, particularly if you look at the British royal family and all the rubbish that they wear. They put on their army uniform, the military uniforms, and all of this stuff. It's quite funny, I think, sometimes. But yes, it's certainly a thing within some military cultures. The display of paraphernalia and I suppose, what would you call it, campaign. I mean, if you thought like about, some of them have just ridiculous amount of things, and it's often, I often think that I've got some World War II medals here, belonging to sort of my dad's, the man that was raised by my father, if you like, by Charlotte, and they're pretty much, they're just cheap metal, they're not really worth dying for, medals and things like that, I suppose. But it's an interesting little statement there, and I just wanted to point it out because later on, this is to do with spoiler alert. Sorry, folks, with Duncan Idaho and the God Emperors, fish speakers, etc., and how they relate to that. And I suppose that this is part of the thing with the Amazons are all women here, resenting the one man. We're going to see more of that, I think. But this is to do with Frank Herbert's attitudes towards homosexuality in the military, which we'll have a look at a lot more down the road in God Emperor. So this is Duncan here now. So the tribes want the Lady Jessica reinstated into the Regency Council. How can that? And he's cut off here. They make unanimous demand, Alia said, pointing to an embossed sheet of spice paper on the divan beside Irulan. Farad'n is one thing, but this has the stink of other alignments. So the cause of Alia's worry here is a demand from the tribes to reinstate Lady Jessica into the Regency Council. And we'll see as we move down the chapter that there's a possibility that whenever the Landsraad meets, that they're looking to limit the powers of the regency, if you like. You get having just finished Fire and Blood, by the way. You get a lot of that there with basically the regencies within it. And having read it, I think that there's even it struck me that there's even more that George R.R. Martin has ripped off from Dune, I think. We'll talk about that in a wee bit, actually. So there's one other thing, by the way. I had noticed the word. If we just pay attention to it, demand or demands. We have it in the epigraph. Precept, the original precept demands that the intellect becomes a totally aware balancing instrument. I think it's another. Is it in there one more time? I think they demand permanence. Again, the word demand is popping up a lot in this chapter. I just thought it was worth pointing out. And it's a demand that I suppose the tribes have made. They want Lady Jessica reinstated to the Regency Council, and we have to remember, I suppose, at the end of it, the tribes really here are Alia's martial power base, if you like, as much as the whole, it's the Fremen are the instrument of power, really. With the old empire, it used to be the Sardaukar. So it's unanimous demand. Fraden's one thing, but this is the stink of other alignments. So different groups coming together really is what she's suggesting. What does Stilgar think? Irulan asked. His signature's on that paper, Alia said, exclamation mark. But if he could be, how could he deny the mother of his god? Alia sneered. It's interesting. How I suppose, and I think really that's the Baron talking quite possibly there. The mother of his god. It sounds quite contemptuous, doesn't it? Idaho looked up at her thinking, that's awfully close to the edge with Irulan. Again, he wondered why Alia had brought him back here when she knew he was needed at Siege Tabar if the abduction plot were to be carried off. Was it possible she'd heard about the message sent to him by the preacher? So again, the preacher has been in contact with Duncan Idaho. This thought filled his breast with turmoil. How could that mendicant mystic know the secret signal by which Paul Atreides had always summoned his sword master? I love that piece of writing there. Doesn't it just flow off the tongue? It's wonderfully alliterative. And I just thought it was just a very nice little bit of poetic writing from Frank. How could that mendicant mystic know the secret signal by which Paul Atreides had always summoned his sword master? Very alliterative, very sibilant. I quite enjoyed it. Mendicant is pertaining to the act of begging, by the way. So a begging mystic is really what he's saying here. Idaho longed to leave this pointless meeting and return to the search for an answer to that question. How did he know? I think the answer is kind of obvious, isn't it? A secret signal by which Paul Atreides summoned his swordmaster. If it's only known to his swordmaster and Paul Atreides, how could it possibly be known? You think that Duncan would logically come to the conclusion, especially as we'll say it in a wee second here, actually. Sorry, that it's probably Paul. So Idaho longed to leave this pointless meeting and return to the search for an answer to that question. This is Alia talking. There's no doubt that the preacher has been off planet, Alia said. The guild wouldn't dare deceive us in such a thing. I will have him. Now, this is the first careful that we get in this, and it's with an exclamation mark. It's careful, Irulan said. And the reason why is explained by Idaho. Indeed, have a care, Idaho said. Half the planet believe him to be, he shrugged, your brother. And Idaho hoped he had carried this off with a properly casual attitude. And that's the bit I was thinking about. If Idaho thinks that half the planet thinks that this preacher is Paul Atreides and this preacher has just sent him a message using only a secret signal that only the two would know, then within his head, certainly subconsciously, I would hope that he would know it's Paul, Now, this is the bit where I just put in, I've written next, this is the Shepherd in George R. Martin's Fire and Blood. Towards the end of Blood and Fire, I'll not try to spoil it or anything. There is a character called the Shepherd, who acts in a very similar way to the preacher. Though there's more than one shepherd, and it's kind of I don't know, it's done in a similar way. But of course, the shepherd in George R. Martin's Fire and Blood is just a man, but acts very much as a kind of religious demagogue, if you like, in a very negative way. I'll not say any more. I don't want to spoil the plot. I don't know if I could actually, the Fire and Blood. But there we go. So here we are. How had the man known that signal? Sorry, I'm jumping ahead of myself, haven't I? But if he's a courier or a spy of the, sorry, that was Alia talking, and she's cut off here. He's made contact with no one from Chome or House Carino, Irulan ruled. We cannot be sure of. She's wrong, by the way. No. Pardon me. So this is Alia now. We can be sure of nothing. And I think this is the interesting thing within this chapter, is that the Irulan seemed very sure of herself, whereas Alia is doubting everything pretty much. Not, again, we can be sure of nothing. Alia did not try to hide her scorn. She turned her back on Irulan, faced Idaho, and we get her thoughts here. He knew why he was here. Why didn't he perform as expected? He was in council because Irulan was here. The history which had brought a princess of House Carino into the Atreides fold could never be forgotten. Now, I've written next that simply put, that Irulan was a conspirator and a poisoner. And ultimately, if you look at it, she's a murderer in relation to Chani. So I suppose where Ali is going with this, I suppose that she doesn't trust Irulan. I suppose it's maybe once a conspirator, always a conspirator, that kind of thing. Pardon me. So we get a little bit of the backstory just here of Irulan. The brought a princess of House Carino to the Atreides fold. Allegiance once changed could change again. Duncan's mentat powers should be searching for flows, for subtle deviations in Irulan's behaviour. So that's it. She suspects her, and that's why, part of the reason why Duncan's here, I think. Idaho stirred, glanced at Irulan. There were times when he resented the straight line necessities imposed on mentat performance. Apologies. He knew what Alia was thinking. Irulan would know it as well. But this princess wife to Paul Muad'Dib had overcome the decisions which had made her less than the royal concubine Chani. There could be no doubt of Irulan's devotion to the royal twins. She had renounced family and Bene Gesserit in dedication to the Atreides. And again, that's Idaho's opinion of Irulan. It doesn't line up with Alia's, but very much so, and that's the case that Irulan is very much on the side of the twins here. I think what we get with Irulan is a certain surety, perhaps an arrogance of her of what she's talking about, but she actually gets quite a lot wrong in this chapter. And her attitude ends up, I think, with Alia sort of doubting whether she's a conspirator or not. But already he's made contact with no one from Chome or House Carino. We know that's incorrect. She's certain of it. And again, we'll get little bits of her certainty here. My mother is part of this plot, Alia insisted. For what other reason would the sisterhood send her back here at a time such as this? And of course, we've already got that I want to come and see my grandchildren, pretty much, is the other reason. Hysteria isn't going to help us, Idaho said. As we pointed out, it's a very provocative and loaded word, isn't it? And then I'll get to your comments in a wee second, folks. Alia whirled away from him as he'd known she would. It helped that he did not have to look at that once beloved face, which was now so twisted by alien possession. And I get so twisted. I suppose the point I'm going to make is that how does Irulan not see it? Or does she, I suppose? Um, well, Irulan said, the guild can't be completely trusted for the guild, Alia sneered. We can't rule out the enmity of the guild or the Bene Gesserit, Idaho said, but we must assign them special categories as essentially passive combatants. The guild will live up to its basic role, never govern. They're a parasitic growth and they know it. They won't do anything to kill the organism which keeps them alive. And I'll just go through this wee bit and then I'll stop for comments. Their idea of which organism keeps them alive may be different from ours, Irulan drawled. It was the closest she ever came to a sneer, that lazy tone of voice which said, "You missed a point, Mentat." So it's a bit of an intellectual dig, I suppose, at Duncan. And the question is, did he? Did he miss a point? Alia appeared puzzled. She had not expected Irulan to take this tack. It was not the kind of view a conspirator would want examined. And I've put that's a bit of doubt there. And then Idaho's no doubt, Idaho said. But the guild won't come out eventually. So the guild won't come out overtly against House Atreides. The Sisterhood, on the other hand, might risk a certain kind of political break, which if they, and he's cut off here, if they do, it'll be through a front. Someone or some group they can disavow, Irulan said. The Bene Gesserit haven't existed all of these centuries without knowing the value of self-effacement. They prefer being behind the throne, not on it. And Alia's thoughts here. Self-effacement, Alia wondered, was that Irulan's choice? Now, we get, I suppose, three groups here that we're discussing. The Guild, the Bene Gesserit, and Chom. And within Idaho's, I suppose, how he's looking at things through the Mentat process, he thinks that they need separated out. The Guild and the Bene Gesserit. The Guild live up to its basic role, never govern. That sounds almost identical to the Bene Gesserit. We won't take, not direct power. To both be powers behind the throne, if you like. And they're described as parasites here, a parasitic growth. So this is the Guild. At the same time, Irulan, and then Duncan is actually suggesting there, well, the Sisterhood might just come out of the shadows in a political way. Irulan's saying, no, that if they did that, they would do it through someone else, through a proxy, or some group that they can discredit. So again, the suggestion is that they would stay as a power behind the throne, if you like. They haven't existed all these centuries without knowing the value of self-effacement. They prefer being behind the throne, not on it. Now, effacement has a couple of different meanings. This is one I wish I could do sometimes. To erase, delete, or cause a memory, emotions, or thoughts to disappear. But in this case, effacement means to conceal oneself, appear insignificant or inconspicuous. I'd be wondering, do we need to add the word self in front of it? But from the French, effacer is to be pardoned or to be absolved, if you like, with the Latin ex away from attached to it. But it's simply to make oneself insignificant or inconspicuous, keep hidden, basically. And that's the way the Bene Gesserit operate. But it maybe not as conspicuous with the Guild, but it certainly never govern. Certainly suggests that both bodies of schools of thought, if you like, the Guild and the Bene Gesserit will always stay that way. Which might not be true. Cynthia said Irulan's mistake regarding where Paul has been suggests that the Guild did deceive the Royal Council to some extent. Yes, indeed. So that's the thing. She's wrong. Let me backtrack here. He's made no contact. He's made contact with no one from Chom or House Carino. We're going to get a word about Irulan's sources, if you like, on Solusus Secundus, and you kind of have to, her informants, if you like, if you want for a better word, her spy network, perhaps, just old friends. It means most likely that, as Cynthia points out, she's been deceived by the Guild, but also her, probably, I'd add to that House Carino are feeding her misinformation. But she's very sure of herself, isn't she? And it is a mistake. She's incorrect. And if that's the case, as we back up, let me find it. I think you're quite right there, Cynthia. Where is it? We have it. What does she say? Alia the Guild. Oh, no, bear with me a second. I'm looking for the. I think I'll jump back too far. But yeah, the guild, was it something like the guild wouldn't dare, that kind of thing? Oh, I can't even find it now. But yes, yeah, they probably have deceived her. And we can take it as deceit is the basis of all warfare, isn't it? If you like. Let me just see. But yes, indeed. And I certainly think the other thing is that this has got Alia heading down the wrong way as well. Yes, there it is. Sorry, I found it. There's no doubt that the preacher has been off planet. No doubt. The guild wouldn't dare deceive us in such a thing. I will have it. Now, what you're saying is if the guild wouldn't dare, have they told him? Have they told her that he has been off planet? There. If they wouldn't dare deceive, she says there's no doubt he's been off planet. The guild wouldn't dare deceive us in such a thing. I will have him. So at that point, I'm not sure. Has the guild told Alia that he's been off planet, or is there a deception there? The guild wouldn't dare deceive us in such a thing. I will have him. Careful. But yeah, again, I think what you're saying, Cynthia, as well, is kind of enshrined with Alia's comment and scorn for Irulan, that we can be sure of nothing. And as I said, that's contrasted with it. Certainly, I think Irulan's very sure of herself in this chapter. Let's see, where did I never govern on the guild? Can't be completely trusted for the guild. Can't rule out the enmity of the guild, but they're passive combatants. In other words, they're hostile. The guild in the Bene Gesserit can be treated as hostile, but not openly so. I think that's what I would take from that. But they won't come out overtly against House Atreides. The sister, on the other hand, that's a different thing. So let's see. Idaho, precise. Just Ali's thoughts. Sorry, just to run that back, the last bit Irulan said they prefer being behind the throne, not on it. We got Alia's thoughts, self-effacement. Alia wondered, was that Irulan's choice? Idaho, precisely the point I make about the guild, Idaho said. He found the necessities of argument and explanation helpful. They kept his mind from other problems. Alia strode back toward the sunlit windows. She knew Idaho's blind spot. Every mentat had it. They had to make pronouncements. I quite like that. I think I once said it was the difference between sagacity and wisdom is the difference between opening your mouth and keeping it shut. That's my own thing, I think. But if you get me. Now, so every mentat had it. They had to make pronouncements. Have to open their mouths and tell. This brought about a tendency to depend upon absolutes to see finite limits. They knew this about themselves. It was part of their training. Yet they continued to act beyond self-limiting parameters. And we get Alia's thoughts here. I should have left him at Sietch Tabr, Alia thought. It would have been better to just turn Irulan over to Javid for questioning. So again, it emphasizes that that's why he's in the room. She really just wants, she's hoping that he's going to go through the mentat process and pick something out about Irulan. That she doesn't trust Irulan. She's brought him back to use his mentat skills here. His processing power, whatever you want to call it that. And now she's thinking it would have just been better to hand her over to Javid for questioning. And I've written next to that, is that torture? Is that a euphemism for torture? And within her skull, Alia heard a rumbling voice. That's the Baron, isn't it? Exactly. And we get her thoughts here. Shut up, shut up, shut up, she thought. A dangerous mistake beckoned her in these moments. and she could not recognize its outlines. All she could see was the danger. Idaho had to help her out of this predicament. So it's possible, I think, I don't know what you guys think about that, about this, sorry, that the Baron within her has probably went, get Irulan, torture her, let's go. And that she's maybe still fighting here. The shut up, shut up, shut up would suggest that she has. But at the same time, we get this twisted look on her face. How much of Alia is the Baron? How much of it is her? Is this a little moment of rebellion? Not too sure. But the Baron, exactly. Has she brought Idaho back as a foil to this? That, just as another way of looking at Irulan, rather than just having her tortured or questioned. I think there would be consequences for that. Possibly. I'm not too sure. It's a bit of a murdery world, isn't it? Carlos is saying, as my dad used to say, Venafe would get away if he'd keep his damn mouth shut. Yes, indeed. I always thought that's the difference. But I thought you could be wise and you could be sagacious, And I always thought it was a good thing to sort of try to head towards sagacity, be wise as a person, which requires an enormous amount of foolishness, I've always thought as well. Thank you. Venafe. Even a fish, did I just say even a fish would get away if he kept his damn mouth shut? Very good. No worries, Carlos. Thank you. I got the gist of it. Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of also Sprag Zarathustra, isn't it? It's yeah. Wise wisdom can be taught, but sagacity. That's, I think, the difference between opening your mouth and keeping it shut. It's a wee funny thing. It's more to do with Greeks, ancient Greek thinkers and stuff. To be honest with you. But I'm a person, depending on who I'm interacting with in society. When I interact with the police, for example, I keep my mouth shut. I'll actively tell myself not to open my mouth and not to say anything more than what needs to be said, just because my personality will piss them off, that kind of thing. So I know when to be quiet, if you like to be polite, this kind of thing, but when to shut your mouth. But I'm not particularly well known for it. I like to talk. But it's sometimes, yeah, it is an interesting thing, isn't it? But no, I like that, Carlos. That's a good wee saying. A fish would get away if it kept its damn mouth shut. Very good. Yes. Oh, dear. Now, let's see. Where do we get to? So the necessities of the argument and explanation helpful. It keeps his mind from other problems. In other words, it keeps him from really... It's taking his mind off what's happened to Alia. Alia strode back towards the sunlit windows. She knew Idaho's blind spot. Every Mentat had it. They had to make pronouncements. This brought about... Oh, sorry, I've read this wee bit. Hang on. Shut up. Sorry, I'll jump on there. But yes, indeed, pronouncements. A tendency to depend upon absolutes to see finite limits. It's a self-aware flaw, if you like. They're well aware of it, but they act as if it doesn't exist. If you like, they have to get on with it. It's a bit like the Mentat must know that it can never have all the data. And that any kind of attempt at calculation or processing of information, if you like, because of the lack of data, must ultimately be a problem, but they have to do it anyway because you can never know everything. Pardon me. So, etc. Yeah, Idaho had to help her out of this predicament. There we go. He was a Mentat. Mentats were necessary. The human computer replaced the mechanical devices destroyed by the Butlerian Jihad. And we get a quote, our famous quotation: "Thou shalt not make a machine in the likeness of a human mind." If we go all the way back to the Dune, I think at the very start, the Reverend Mother says, the Reverend Mother Gaius Helmoheim says it something like, paraphrasing, it should be more like we should not make a machine to counterfeit a human mind, I think. Isn't that right? Very, very interesting, actually, the AI situation at the minute. I think somebody was talking about I have no mouth and must scream, just having read it again. I've been considering some of the more nasty AIs in literature. and some of the more interesting warnings about AIs in science fiction. Starting to think quite a bit about it, actually. I think that Burn Revenge book that I picked up is a murder mystery involving an AI as well, by the looks of it. Just reading I've not read it before. True Names, it's called. But just by reading the blurb on the back. Now, let's see. I shall not now. So mentats are necessary. And we get this, a little bit of Butler and Jihad here, but again, we get this. Alia longed now for a compliant machine. They could not have suffered, they could not have suffered from Idaho's limitations. You could never distrust a machine. Never is an absolute, not true. I would distrust machines. Depends on who built them and what their wear and tear is. And all machines fail is what I've written next to that, given time. But I've also written next to that, she desires an artificial intelligence, doesn't she? That's what she wants here. A compliant machine. I just noticed I've written that down wrong. I've written compliant. Compliant. There we go. That's silly. Pardon me, let me get some fluids here, folks. I think we're getting within this chapter, by the way, just before we go on, a fair chunk of foreshadowing. And foreshadowing is the thing that Frank doesn't do a lot because of the prescience. He actually tends to tell us what's going to happen. But I think we get a little bit of it within this chapter, not specifically this bit. But I'll point it out when we get to it, I suppose. Alia heard Irulan's drawling voice, a faint within a faint within a faint within a faint, Irulan said. And that's very much back into the political machinations of the Dune universe, isn't it? We all know the accepted pattern of attack upon power. I don't blame Alia for her suspicions. Of course she suspects everyone, even us. Ignore that for the moment, though. What remains as the primary of motives, the most fertile source of danger to the Regency? Chom, Idaho said. His voice, I'll do that again, sorry. Chom, Idaho said, his voice mentat flat. That's his pronouncement I've written there. Just backing up a wee bit, the accepted pattern of attack upon power, if you like, is canly, isn't it, within the Dune universe, that there's rules for the assassinations and killing of people within the nobility, because we are in a feudal society, the Fifelish system. And we're going to actually see a wee bit of insight into that in a second. And I think we're going to get something very interesting in relation to Melange. Chom is that, so we've had a wee quick mention about the Bene Gesserit, the guild. This is the who's involved in this conspiracy, etc. What Irulan says there before we move on with it, I think, raises a couple of questions. One is, I suppose we could ask, is Irulan as naive as she comes across in this chapter? That's the first one. The second one is she aware of what's happened to Alia? And does she see it? And part of what she says here, I think, was that if she did suspect her of being, if Alia did suspect her of being involved in a conspiracy, this is a very, very good way to deflect it, if you see what I mean. And so I'm not 100% sure, but I think there's a bit of intelligence at work in this statement. Just this bit, this is, by the way, this would be quite a good rhetorical statement to make, if you like. I don't blame Alia for her suspicions. Of course she suspects everyone, even us. So that's an acknowledgement, isn't it? And it's going to put Alia on a back foot, I think. Ignore that for a moment, though. Set that aside. Forget that you think we're involved. What's the primary of motives? Motive. The most fertile source of danger to the Regency. So means, motive, and opportunity, as the police would sort of tell you when they're investigating murders. Means and opportunity we can get to later on. We'll run through it as the who, what, why, where, when, if you like. But instead we focus on motive. What's the motive for this? That's Chom. Combine Oberadvancer Mercantiles. So Alia allowed herself a grim smile. The Combine haunted Oberadvancer Mercantilis, but House Atreides dominated Chum with 51% of its shares. The priesthood of Muad'Dib had another 5%. Pragmatic acceptance by the great houses that Dune controlled the priceless melange, not without reason, was the price often called the secret coinage. Without melange, the Spacing Guild's highliners could not move. That's not true. I'll explain in a wee second. Melange precipitated the navigation trance by which a translight pathway could be seen before it was travelled. That is correct, but there's other ways of travelling in space. If we look at the appendix of Dune, it's explained to you there. We could use navigational computers basic, but I think there's a high risk of traveling without the navigation trance. But certainly there is what's referred to as translate pathways. There is space travel like that in the Dune universe. But it seems that it's been replaced by the navigators using the navigation trance, if that makes sense. So I think there's no reason for them to not go back, if you like. But again, it's to do with addiction to melange and things. Without melange and its amplification of the human immunogenic system, life expectancy for the very rich degenerated by a factor of at least 4. Even the vast middle class of the Imperium ate diluted melange in small sprinklings with at least 1 meal a day. But Alia had heard the Mentat sincerity in Idaho's voice, a sound which she'd been awaiting with terrible expectancy. So just stop there a wee second, jump back. What we've got essentially is a wee bit of a breakdown of some of the things that are dependent on melange here. We get a bit of the economics of the empire. Pardon me. And so as much as we've started off with the Bene Gesserit and the Guild, Idaho's jumped to Chom. But Chom is controlled by the Atreides. What we've got here is 51% for House Atreides plus 5% for the priesthood, if you like, would give them a controlling, if they're together, a controlling stock option, if we want to call it that, of 56% of Chom. That means all the other houses must own 44% of the shares. If they put together with the priests, they would still only have 49% of the shares. So the threat here is being perceived as Chom. What's really interesting is that House Atreides controls it. But Chom, for want of a better word, the allegory is that they're OPEC, aren't they? So I think that's interesting. The secret coinage, by the way, the priceless melange. Melange equals wealth in the empire, converts to solaris. Now, Combine Hon Oberadvancer Mercantilis, by the way, it's a bit of a hodgepodge of different languages, but what it essentially means, there's a bit of French, there's a bit of German, there's a bit of English. It means the combined honesty, if you like, for the over the advancement of merchandise. If that's how I would translate it. The combination on it is honesty, over the advancement of merchandise. So it sounds like a large organization, if you like. Or certainly could have a lot of people in it, and I suppose the amount of wealth within it, how much wealth you own within Chom, would dictate how much power you have within the universe. What's very interesting here is that we have a talk about so we've got the foul-foolish system. As we have a talk about the rich. And we've discussed this before. Is melange out of the reach of the poor? Certainly, if it's so expensive, we get a discussion of how the rich, the rich have it no problem. Fine, we can understand that. But then we're told even the vast middle class of the Imperium ate diluted melange in small sprinklings with at least 1 meal a day. There's no talk about the working class or the lower class or whatever you want to call it here. And what I thought was interesting is, A wee while back, we've been talking about the Bene Gesserit ability to make themselves look young and how they wouldn't do that because it would make arise jealousy, etc., etc. Here we've got a drug that prevents aging, has all sorts of. It's a ubiquitous drug, isn't it, melange? All sorts of things. The rich have it, the middle class have it, but we have to assume that the very bottom elements of society don't have it. Pardon me. Now, for people kept under the boot, in a feudal system, to look at your lords and masters and see them living long while you die young, I think that would cause more resentment than anything because they have access to one thing and you don't. And I think it's just interesting that we don't get a mention of a lower class here. I think it's really interesting. Here's a bunch of stuff about melange. There's the rich. There's the secret coinage, how it affects the guild, translate, but then without it, amplification of the human immunogenic system. Now, the immune system, by the way, is what Frank's talking about here. Immunogenity is the ability of a foreign substance. The ability of a foreign substance, for example, an antigen that provides an immune response, if you like. The ability of a foreign substance, such as an antigen, to provide an immune response is immunogenuity. Oh god, that's a tricky one. Bear with immunogenuity. Sorry. But what Frank's talking about here is the human immune system. It's not the immunogenic system. It's a different thing. There we go. So it's just something I thought was worth mentioning. I'll quickly catch up with your comments here, folks. I always thought about that before, but I thought the way we not talk about the fountain of youth type ability, if you like, of the Bene Gesserit to make themselves look young, and you kind of wonder what's the average age expectancy for the working class in this universe. The use of melange is an anti-agapic, if you want that. I think that's a term coined by J. Michael Straczynski, by the way. I don't know. It doesn't seem to provide that much more increased longevity. I think we had the world's oldest woman just pass away the other day. I think she was 116. But if we look at the back of Dune, nobody seems to live to a particularly excessive lifespan. With whether they got all the melange in the world, if you like. But if we check out the appendices of Dune, we get some dates. I think it's Appendix 4. Bear with me a second. But we get some dates on. That's two. Where we go? Shaddam, he would be 66 and add 2. 60. What? Bear with me a second. Hang on. Shaddam the 4th, let's find out. So he's. My brains are away with it today. There you go. Shaddam the 4th is 68 when he dies. 46. Jessica's over 100 when she passes. But it's not. Casimir Fenring would be 67 on 25. He's in his 90s. Nobody's living. For all the effects of melange, no one seems to be living a particularly long time because of it. Nothing that's outside our experience at the minute. There are people who live longer now, which I think is a bit odd. I'll catch up with your comments here in a second, folks. Cynthia's saying, inquiry and pronouncements, the balancing instrument of the Menta. So this, remember back in chapter 16, when Alia mulls the tensions in the Chom Landsrad regarding the encroachment of forbidden technology. Yes, Alia's longing for compliant machines suggests that they might exist. Alia doesn't yet dare such a purchase, but it tempts her and many others in the Empire. Yeah, we're going to get a wee mention of that, actually. There's more to that in this chapter. The technologies, as I said, I think we're getting some foreshadowing here, but in particular to that, the technologies that are on the fringe worlds, if you like. Over here, actually, it's this bit here. Sorry, that's my old memory. I did these notes last week. It's right in front of me. It's the next bit I'm about to read. I'll just go to. But Alia heard the mentat's sincerity in Idaho's voice, a sound which she'd been awaiting with a terrible expectancy. So she knows he's being honest. Chom, the Combine Honnet, was much more than House Atreides, much more than Dune, much more than the priesthood of Merlange. There we go. So regardless of that controlling stock, there's a lot more to it than that. It was ink vines, whale fur, shigawire, Ixian artifacts and entertainers, trade in people and places, the Hajj, those products which came, this is the bit, those products which came from the borderline legality of Thylaxu technology. It was addictive drugs and medical techniques. It was transportation, the guild, and all of the super complex commerce of an empire which encompassed thousands of known planets, plus some which fed secretly at the fringes, permitted there for services required. It's very euphemistic. That services required allowed planets like Tupile, for example, or Tupile, depending on how we pronounce it. Are allowed to exist, and their location would have to be known by the guild, and therefore probably by Chom. There's probably trade. So there's a back and forward between fringe worlds at the edge of the empire or outside of it. And that particular, as much as there's the focus on the Thylaxu technology here and the Ixians, we have that other thing. The super complex commerce of an empire which encompassed thousands of known planets, plus some which fed secretly at the fringes, permitted there for services required. And it's what we were saying about certain technologies, Cynthia's point, that some of these things are kind of more available, if you like, to the super rich, the highest points of the pardon me, the power structure within the empire. In all honesty, for example, if you invented something which superseded or nullified a piece of tech, you probably would, in a furry system, in a feudal universe, you probably would present it to the emperor to see if how it would go about, I think, that kind of thing. When Idaho said Chom, he spoke of a constant ferment, intrigue within intrigue, a play of powers with a shift of 1 geodecimal point in interest payments could change the ownership of an entire planet. So very much the commercial heart, if you like, of the Dune universe is Chom. A good parallel, as much as I think Herbert talks about them being like OPEC, I think another good parallel for them would be the East India Company, things like that. Intrigue within intrigue, a play of powers. Simply put, a vast web of commerce and trade of all sorts between planets. And of course, that trade depends entirely on the guild for transport. Geodecimal is a good one, by the way. Geodecimal is base 12. It's not a number system I would choose for commerce. It's quite interesting, actually. I teach 3 different number systems for mathematics. So I teach the decimal system. In fact, I'll tell you how I do it, actually. So this is what, for the primary school kids, I just teach decimal and sexagesimal. And then for the secondary school, we have to do binary as well. So that's 3 number systems I teach for computers and maths, if you like. Sexagesimal is pretty much our oldest number system, base 60. That goes all the way back to Sumerian, Mesopotamian mathematics. And if you want to look it up, it's fascinating. And why we still use sexagesimal today for time. And how I would teach these things, I explain that, for example, base 60, there's 60 numbers in it. the largest number in it is one less than what it's called. So the largest number is 59, smallest number is 0. In ancient Mesopotamia, we'll use that word, mathematics, for example, there is no representation for the number 0. That's got a whole history on itself. It's represented by an absence of a thing. Pardon me. And the reason why we use base 60 sexagesimal for time is simply that 60 is one of the incredibly factorizable number. And within those factors, for example, of 60, so if you think about how you divide your day up, quarters of an hour, all of this kind of thing, how you divide up the clock, if you like. So even within the circle, there's there's 12 numbers, each representing 5 minutes. That's your 60. So all of these factors, it's such a factorizable number. And it also, not only is it also contains the number 10, but also contains 2, 3, and 5, which are the first 3 primes, for example. So it's a very, very useful number system, and it's what we still use for time 6,000 years later. We never switched to decimal for time. Decimal is a decimal system for counting. From decades, 10, Greek and Latin. Decimal is little tens or tenths is what it means. It's got nothing to do with dots at all. The dot in the decimal system separates whole numbers from numbers that aren't enough to give you 1. And then the other one's binary. So, the decimal system, largest number is 9, smallest number is 0. And binary, largest number is 0. Smallest number is 0, largest number is 1. So we've got Frank has dropped in duodecimal here for the, which seems to be how the commerce system in the Dune universe works. If you have a look at Dune, base 12, I would say it's a bit of an odd thing. The shift of 1 duodecimal point interest payments could change the ownership of an entire planet. Duodecimal, there are 12 characters if you want. So the numbers 0 to 9 are represented. And then for number 10, you would use the letter A. For number 11, you would use the letter B. And then for the number 12, you use the number 10. And that's, so there we go. But the other thing I would show the kids is that if you think about how I used to teach, and we would count 1 to 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 on our fingers. If you look at if you think about the dactyl, the way the Greeks used to look at the finger. There you go. And this is why we have dactylic hexameter. Dactyl is your finger in Greek. For poetic meter is 1 long syllable and 2 short ones, like your finger. But they would count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Use your thumb as a tally. 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. And so base, 24 hours in a day, 2 sets of 12. All of this, that's kind of, I thought, yeah, Frank's being, it's a little bit science fiction-y. I just thought base 12 is an appalling number system to use for commerce. Excuse me. But there you go. So, and I was wondering, did he know what duodecimal was? Because I thought I'd have a wee quick look up about it. I didn't think it was that modern a number system, or not ancient a modern system, by the way. So I had a wee quick nosy, but I think it's relatively modern. Is there a history on it here? Let me see. Very quickly. Positional numeral system using 12 at its base. Oh, that's right. Yeah. Oh, so 12 means 1, 10, 2 units. String 10 means 10. Duodecimal, 100 means 12 squared. 1,000 means 12 cubed. Yeah. Yes, hexadecimal is much. I think a lot easier to use. Probably this makes more sense than this one. Yeah, it says again the number 12 is a superior highly composite number. Again, 12 would be a factor of 60 as well. So it tends to be the way we use these. But here we go. Origin. It's a system of finger. Oh no. Okay. Let me see. It says here George Ifra speculatively traced the origin of the duodecimal system to a system of. It's what I just showed you. Actually, there you go. A system of finger counting based on the knuckle bones of the 4 larger fingers. Using the thumb as a pointer, It is possible to count to 12 by touching each finger bone, starting with the farthest bone on the fifth finger and counting on. Blah blah blah. The system other displays the number of iterations until 5 dozen like 60 are full. The system is still in use in many regions of Asia. There you go. What do I know? But well, the only thing that I would say about that is that's not the number system that the Babylonians were using. It was sexagesimal, and that 12 is a factor of 60. But I'll maybe have a look into that. But yeah, if you have a look at kind of Babylonian mathematics and stuff like that, Wikipedia's got some good stuff on it. Just look, there's a little bit of there's an interesting thing about the Dune universe that I don't think we knew before. Its commerce is based on duodecimal system. What do you want, Big Love? Oh, in fact, if you give me a wee second, folks, I'm going to take a wee quick break here just to see Holly's looking out. I think my wife's in bed, so I might have to do it. Bear with me a wee second. Oh, no, you're still up. Oh, it's okay. There we go. Just getting barked at, aren't they? Hello. Sorry about that. Dear, let me just catch up with your comments. This could be a place just to stop there. Alia doesn't yet dare such a purchase, but attempts for many others in the Empire. Carlos saying the closer you get to the end, the more valuable each moment becomes. Christopher Crowley, at least Hex makes more sense than a 12-bit system. It's kind of an odd one. Christopher said, after going to uni for computer science, I can still count in binary, subtracting not so much. The stuff I used to be able to do, Christopher, I was actually telling a student the other day how useless, I think I've told you guys, how useless I think I have a master's in computing and information systems. And as much as there's a good knowledge and stuff in there in terms of the language skills and things like that, it's becoming pretty worthless, isn't it? But yeah, we used would you believe, Christopher, when I did my degree, God, what do we have to do? If you know what a cyclic redundancy check is, used to be that if you sent a bit of information across the internet, how do you know that the same bit of data arrives that you sent? We use check digits and stuff like this. So it's basically doing long division with polynomial generators and binary. You divide the number by so you set out you say you'd have an 8-digit. Goodness, I don't know if I can remember this right or not. But if you had an 8-digit zeros and ones representing, say, a letter, then when it gets sent, you'd attach a digit at the front and 2 at the end, for example. Those are your check digits, and then you divide that number, the binary number in long division, by the digit, and you should get the remainder correct. And and that's how I used to do that, is by how to do a cyclic redundancy check by hand. And goodness, I think the day we graduated, almost all the wireless stuff hit, and all the cable stuff that we learned, and networking just became redundant. The first network I ever built was wireless. And but goodness, I'm not joking, Christopher. If you asked me to do that, now I could sort of explain it to you, but I would have to go and learn it again. I think I have a fair idea, but it's been so long. It's not necessary. Machines do this for us. So it was a thing you might have noticed, particularly, goodness, a long time ago, if you were decompressing software, something like a zip file or something, you get this CRC 20 check 23 failed or something like that. That's essentially the computer doing it, but we used to do it by hand. I was taught to do it by hand. There you go. Yes, I can totally relate to you on that one. Christopher said, but agreed, I did not know about that before. About chum, kind of forgives Leto putting everyone through the famine times. So it's as I said, that Herbert talks about them being like OPEC. I would, in this case, I would also, very much in terms of oil, that's melange, but the direct allegory for melange is oil and potable water. But within this, I would say very similar to things like the East India Company and whatever kind of trade conglomerates exist today. I suppose OPEC's still going. Start over, people. Yes, indeed. just thinking about that. I've got all 6 episodes of Earth Abides at the minute, folks. For anybody, I was talking about this book. Did I put it back on the bookshelf? Hang on a wee second. Bear with me. I've dug out a lot of books there this week. I can't see it. It's falling apart. Anyway, George R. Stewart's Earth Abides has been made into a 6-episode TV series. It's a book that I've compared to Dune. It's a book published in 1949. Sorry, it's just what you said, Christopher, that reminded me of it. Start over, people. And it's kind of a post-apocalyptic environmental disaster type thing, with particularly about how mankind relies on certain types of technology and stuff. It's a good book. I've seen the first 2 episodes of it now. It's been updated for a modern setting. But I'll let you know what I think about it. But if anybody hasn't heard about it, I know In the Shadow, I actually find it really interesting. Excuse me a second. Let me see if I can find it for you. Where would you be? You shouldn't be far. I had it the other day. Not many books lying around in here. No, I can't see it handy, folks. Sorry, I'll not waste your time. I think I maybe moved it down to the other room. What I thought was really interesting is if anybody checks out my Dune YouTube videos on the PhD ones, the Piled Higher and Deeper, if you go to chapter 4, the ecology one, you'll see me talking a fair bit about George R. Stewart's Earth Abides in relation to environmental literature, science fiction at the time, and Dune. And the books are very similar in a certain way, stylistically. I thought it was fascinating that Dune prophecy has come out and then Earth Abides has landed as well. So it's if anyone's not aware of it, it's George R. Stewart's only science fiction book. It was written in 1949. I think I was telling the audience the other day that my book has the wrong publishing information on it. But it's, start over. Sorry, that's just what it reminded me about, But yes, indeed. No, but I when I'm sort of teaching the kids about Babylonian mathematics and cuneiform and how it works, and I tend to try and use little, we get a bit of blue tack out because they didn't write; they would imprint on, clay, and we make the little marks and get them to, because you have a specific character for 1 in cuneiform, and then you have a character for 10. So it's a good way of putting them. It's easy to learn. It's very easy to learn, Oh, right. Where did we get to? But yeah, duodecimal system for commerce in the Dune universe. Interesting. I love decimal because it's so simple. Decimal really is a lovely mathematical system. But as I always point out, it's got nothing to do. The word decimal's got nothing to do with the little dot at all. The dot's an abstract that we throw in there to separate whole numbers from not whole numbers, I suppose. I'm sure you folks all know this. I'm sorry I've slipped into teaching. I do apologize. I've written there planet for sale, new owner one. Kind of thing, just having a bit of fun with that. Now, let's see. But very much the suggestion there, by the way, is that the economy of the Dune universe is very fragile. That a simple shift in a decimal point in interest payments could change the ownership of an entire planet. And we have to assume that, I guess, that planets are in general owned by major houses, I've often wondered why the Talaxi aren't considered like a house, if you see what I mean. I think they're more of an entire people, aren't they? It's the same with the Ixians, isn't it? We don't hear of House X, do we? Alia returned to stand over the 2 seated on the divans. Something specific about Chom that bothers you? She asked. There's always the heavy speculative stockpiling of spice by certain houses, Irulan said. Alia slapped her hands against her own thighs and gestured at the embossed spice paper beside Irulan. That demanded doesn't intrigue you, coming as it does? And she's cut off here. There, just before we go on with that, there's that word demanded there. And I get the strong suggestion that's the wording within the Fremen's document that they've sent, insisting that Jessica be reinstated. Let me just look this up a wee second here, folks. Just sorry, I wasn't sure if I'd written that down correctly. Let me see what notes that. Demanded 41. That demanded, yes, that emphasis on it, I've underlined it. Doesn't intrigue you? Comics, it does. It's a demand. We want this. And again, that's another version of that word there. And we get, okay, all right, Idaho barked. Out with it. What are you withholding? You know better than to deny the data and still expect me to function as... And he's cut off as well. There has been... And here she comes with it, I suppose. There has been a recent, very significant increase in trade for people with 4 special... Hang on. With 4 specialties. Ask me again, I think. Hang on. Or is it? No, it's not. It is me. Hang on. Sorry. 4 specific specialities. Is that what I wrote? 4 special. Let me just change that. It's 4 special specialities. 4 specific. There we go. Apologies. Let me just read that again. There's been a recent, very significant increase in trade for people with 4 specific specialities, Alia said. She wondered if this would be truly new information for the pair. Which specialities? Irulan asked. So here they are. Sword masters, twisted mentats from Twi'leks, conditioned medics from the Sook school, and FinCap accountants, most especially the latter. Why should questionable bookkeeping be in demand right now? She directed the question Idaho. So before we run through that, let's just have a look. So we've got the... by the way, this is interesting because since the end of June, we have had no mention of the Sook school at all. In June Messiah, there's this constant thing about the medics, but they're not referred to as Sook doctors in any shape or form. And we kind of wondered about that. Was it something to do with Dr. Yui? Because the idea that trying to keep the fact that Sook conditioning had been broken, trying to keep that a secret, was an interesting thing. But I suppose if the fact got out, what would it have done to the Sook school? But they're back in existence here. This is the first time we've heard them mentioned in the Dune series since June, I think. So they're looking for sword masters, twisted mentats from Twi'leks. In other words, mentats that are... now I do take that the twisted mentat as a Gola and is a bit of a psychopath, basically. Pyro de Vries would be a twisted mentat. Conditioned medics from the Sook school, conditioned. Again, that condition can be broken. And FinCap accountants. I just went FinCap. It must be financial capital or something like that. I think it's just an abbreviation for it. But especially the accountants. Why should questionable bookkeeping be in demand right now? So sword masters would be from Ginas. You would require them to train your army. Twisted mentats from Twi'leks would be required for your house strategy and all things tactical, I suppose. Conditioned medics, not too sure why, but they're medical, of course. And then the FinCap accountants, I've written finance, capital, profits, accounts, doing the books, this kind of thing. Those are what they're involved in. So Idaho's thoughts are here as a function as a mentat, he thought. Well, that was better than dwelling on what Alia had become. He focused on her words, replaying them in his mind mentat fashion. I created a wee set of icons for these guys, but well, the Sook's the wee diamond, doesn't it? But I went with a wee... What did I go with? I went with a wee sword over here for the sword masters. I had this. I came up with this for the... Oh, sorry. Hang on. Let's just do that. I came up with this for the twisted mentats. Not quite sure why. Sook doctors and then Solaris. There we are. Cash for the... Just wee icons for me to pop down on my notes. So here we go. Sword master. That had been his own calling once. Sword masters were, of course, more than personal fighters. They could repair force shields, plan military campaigns, design military support facilities, improvise weapons. So there's a bit more to the swordmaster than just mucking around with a sword. Twisted mentats, the Tyrax who persisted in this hoax, obviously. What's that mean? As a mentat himself, Idaho knew the fragile insecurity of Tyraxu twisting. Great houses which bought such mentats hoped to control them absolutely. Impossible. Even Peter de Vries, got his name spelt correctly here, who'd served the Harkonnens in their assault on House Atreides, had maintained his own essential dignity, accepting death rather than surrender his inner core of serfdom at the end. Sook doctors. Sorry, I've just written next to that, by the way. How does he know? And is it true? How would he know? Sook doctors, their conditioning supposedly guaranteed them against disloyalty to their owner patients. Sook doctors came very expensive. Increased purchase of sooks would involve substantial exchange of funds. Idaho weighed these facts against an increase in FinCap accountants. Prime computation, he said, indicating a heavily weighted assurance that he spoke inductive fact. So inductive is where you go from a detailed point of view to a general conclusion, if you like, as opposed to inductive reasoning and deductive reasoning, I suppose. Deductive reasoning is the Sherlock Holmes type, isn't it? Different types of reasoning. It's quite interesting. There's been a recent increase. So let me just read that. Prime computation, he said, indicating a heavily weighted assurance that he spoke inductive fact. There's been a recent increase in wealth among houses minor. Some have to be moving towards great house status. Such wealth could only come from some specific shifts in political alignments. We come at last to the Landsraad, Alia said, voicing her own belief. And this is Irulan. The next Landsraad session is almost 2 standard years away, Irulan reminded her. And I've written down, that's not just slow, that's glacial. That would seem to be a very ineffective kind of governmental process, if you like. If we think of the Landsraad as kind of like a parliament for all the houses, if you like. But almost 2 years away. Pardon me, that doesn't tell us when the last meeting was. So I'm kind of wondering, how long is it between Landsraad meetings? And again, I suppose it's part and parcel of the nature of the Imperium that it must be quite difficult to get all the different houses, etc., of the Landsraad together in one place, if you like. But at the same time, I don't understand why there's not somewhere put aside where representatives are there all the time, if you see what I mean, where they actually have a place to meet. But political bargaining never ceases, Alia said, and I'll warrant some among those tribal signatories, she gestured at the paper beside Irulan, are among the houses minor who've shifted their alignments. Perhaps, Irulan said. The Landsraad, Irulan said, what better front for the Bene Gesserit? And what better agent for the sisterhood than my own mother? You get that sense, I suppose, different houses would have, Bene Gesserits either as concubines, wives, advisors, truthsayers, etc., etc. And that very much so is a medium that would allow the Bene Gesserit to operate in all sorts of ways. By influencing the Landsraad, they can influence everything else. And what better, and again, the suspicion of her mother here. Alia planted herself directly in front of Idaho. Well, Duncan. And Idaho's thoughts here, why not function as a mentat? It keeps going there. Basically, just, I'll do this, I'll keep my mind off this. Idaho asked himself. He saw the tenor of Alia's suspicions now. After all, Duncan Idaho had been personal house guard to the Lady Jessica for many years. So that's why she suspects him. Because he's been Jessica's bodyguard, basically. Duncan, Alia pressed. You should inquire closely after any advisory legislation which may be under preparation for the next session of the Landsrat, Idaho said. They might take the legal position that a regency can't veto certain kinds of legislation, specifically adjustments of taxation and the policing of cartels. There are others, but, and Irulan says, not a very good pragmatic bet on their part if they take that position. I agree, Alia said, the Sardaukar have no teeth, and we still have our Fremen legions. Careful, Alia, Idaho said. Second time that's been said to her. Our enemies would like nothing better than to make us appear monstrous. No matter how many legions you command, power ultimately rides on popular sufferance in an empire as scattered as this one. So, Idaho's basically saying, what are Chom up to? But have a look at the Landsrat here. Inquire what's going to be brought up at the next session of the Landsrat. And this is against the legal position that they might take, that you're a regent, you're not an emperor, you can't do diddly. We're not going to let you make changes to tax. We're not going to let you police cartels. We're not going to let you do anything because you're a regent. And probably either to ratify that legal position or change it, possibly. So that's where I suppose that these houses, if they're going to have a poke at Alia to try and remove her as regent, to attack her, of course, this isn't the case, is it? That's possibly how they would do it. And that the Bene Gesserit would be manipulating the Landsrat, and of course that they probably sent my mother here as well. So, excuse me, pardon me. Now, Irulan says that's not a very pragmatic bet on their part. It's not very practical to do that. If they do that, again, why? Because they've got no teeth. How are they going to enforce that with me? I've got teeth, is what Alia's been pretty much saying. There's no Sardaukar to enforce this anymore. I've got the Fremen legions. And we still have, she uses there, the we. And we get this other careful Alia. So in other words, if they do act like that, it wouldn't be very practical, and all you have to do is show them your teeth, send them the Fremen, give them a good kicking. Pretty much is what. Careful Alia, Idaho said. That's the second one. Our enemies would like nothing better than to make you appear monstrous. They'd love to provoke you into doing something like this. So no matter how many legions you command, power ultimately rides on popular sufferance in an empire as scattered as this one. Now, popular sufferance, Irulan asked. You mean great house sufferance, Alia said. And I've written next to this, does he? Bread and circuses, isn't it? There's many a country has fallen, many a leader taken out because the people finally get annoyed. Not the houses, not the nobles, not the rich and wealthy. It's the populace, the masses, the unwashed masses will rise up and crush anyone when they choose to. Kind of wonder why some countries haven't done this yet, like North Korea or something, like cases like that. And I think it's quite interesting recently. We've seen, we just saw Justin Trudeau resign there. He's an idiot, isn't he? And but South Korea, I think what's been happening there has been particularly worrying, where you have a democracy and it's just nearly one man again has nearly managed to bring it all down. They've impeached him and trying to arrest him. And as always, it's the military that are controlled by these individuals that allow them to stay in power. We've got the likes of Assad in Syria. He's out now. Madmen. One person given power can ruin an entire country and its people. And it just takes him. All you got to do wipe that out is to get up and go kill them. Have a revolution, get the people out there, grab the buggers and string them up. It's amazing how much death is caused by single individuals in the world today, and those single individuals are put into power to rule a country. Something I always thought was quite interesting, if you ever remember watching Battlestar Galactica, the reimagined series, what I thought was quite good about it was that the president of the colonies kept a tally of the lives lost. I sometimes think that all political rulers should have a list of people, a number like that on their board in their office. How many people have died under your rule? And I don't mean just natural deaths. I mean, how many people's deaths have your policies or your actions or inactions caused? But we love to give power to one individual, don't we? It's a weird thing. Some places, some people keep it and use it. So again, power in different ways is interesting. How it's managed, how it's perpetuated is a very interesting thing. I live in a country. The United Kingdom is, what is it we call it, a constitutional? Oh, what the heck do you call it? A parliamentary democracy with a constitutional monarchy. Technically, that makes it not a democracy. We don't have a constitution, and we do have a monarch, which is a monarch means one ruler, but he doesn't rule. But at the same time, the royal family get all our money. They sit on their backsides and do nothing, and they're very dodgy people, and they perpetuate. When I was on holiday in Amsterdam. Maybe the last time we were chatting to a chap from Belgium. It was very nice. We're just having a natter with him outside, and he was telling us that everybody in Belgium's taxed by the Catholic Church, and that to not pay it, you have to go through quite a bit of a hop about opt-out process, And I just thought that's bizarre. You're a modern democratic country. Why are you paying this organization that exists technically in another state? And why does it have control to tax you in your country? And that's the Vatican. It's bizarre. But yeah, popular sufferance. The Romans understand this, by the way, very well. The Roman emperors know all about this. You want to keep your empire running. You don't want to get lynched, because they will come for it. It's bread and circuses is what. As long as you keep people fed and entertained, they will put up with almost anything. But the minute you pull the food and cut the entertainment, you're in trouble. Bread and circuses. And they're Germans. So you lost me there, Christopher. Oh, the royal family. Yes, indeed. The British royal family aren't British at all. There's Saxe Coburg House. They changed their names, didn't they? A long time ago to the House Windsor and Mountbatten. Yes, indeed. It's interesting. We're going to get a wee talk about parasites on society, and I wonder. I could list the main ones in the UK. The biggest parasites on people are the royal family, the Church of England, the Anglican Church, and then Parliament itself. Or they're all what I would call bottom feeders. And they all, the BBC is another one, by the way. The BBC in the UK is a parasite that feeds on the people. The BBC is very dodgy these days, I think. Popular sufferance, Irulan asked, what do you mean great house sufferance? Alia said, does he? Does he really? But he goes with it. And how many great houses will we face under this new alliance? Idaho asked. Money is collecting in strange places. The fringes? Irulan asked. Idaho shrugged. It was an unanswerable question. All of them suspected that one day the Tleilaxu, or technological tinkers on the imperial fringes, would nullify the Holtzman effect. On that day, shields would be useless. The whole precarious balance which maintained planetary feudatories would collapse. And Alia refused to consider that possibility. So they're talking about a technological shift in the empire. Where's the money collecting in strange places? The fringes. He can't answer that, but I think it's likely. I think this is quite interesting. Pardon me. All of them suspected that one day the Tleilaxu or technological tinkers in the Imperium fringes would nullify the Holtzman effect. Now, the Holtzman effect has different levels, if you like, and does different things. It's also what drives the guild engines. For example, shields, yes, suspensors. There's different aspects to it. I think we've looked at it in some detail before. Let me see just quickly. So to know, now I've always thought that there's a few problems with the whole shield thing, especially if you connect a laser to fire laser at a shield, you get basically atomic fusion, don't you? Now, if you think of the first David Lynch Dune movie, you've got the Hunter Seeker, even just the book, the Hunter Seeker guy sent to kill Paul, his wall, he's found walled up. That's a suicide trooper, isn't it? That man's gone there, the Hunter Seeker, knowing that there's no way he's going to survive. And he's been walled up and he controls it from that thing. If that man's prepared to kill himself, why not just wait till they turn the shield on and just, if he's a suicide troop, just point the laser at it and boom, and that's goodbye all of House Atreides in one instant. Unfortunately, there's an awful lot of things like that within the Dune series. Let me just see that, particularly with spoiler alert, if you know how to kill the God Emperor, he's very easily killed. So the Holtzman effect is the negative repelling effect of a shield generator. Is that all that's there? Let me just see. I'll jump the shield. Technology. Sorry, just looking at the terminology of the Imperium here. Shield defensive. The protective field produced by a Holtzman generator. The field derives from phase 1 of the suspensor nullification effect. The shield will permit entry only to objects moving at slow speeds. Depending on setting, the speed ranges from 6 to 9 centimeters per second and can be shortened out only by a shower-sized electrical field. See lasgun. Continuous wave laser projector in use as a weapon is limited in field generator shield culture because of the explosive pyrotechnics, technically subatomic fusion created when its beam intersects a shield. So, it's it's interesting to nullify the Holtzman effect, some kind of tech that would just wipe it out. Shields would be useless. But if it did that, then I think it would affect a lot of other things as well. I think that was one. I don't know if you noticed that one of the things I kind of had a problem with the Dune, Denis Villeneuve's Dune, and also a Dune prophecy, is that there doesn't seem to be any slow blades penetrating shields at all. Everyone's just at it, and just there you go. And we'll go through a little bit of red stain. There's not, you got very much that within the David Lynch. The slow blade penetrates the shield, But I didn't really seem to get it in either of those. But Alia refused to consider that possibility. What we're talking about there is societal collapse within the Dune universe. Pardon me. We'll ride with what we have, she said. And what we have is a certain knowledge throughout that the Chom Directorate that we can destroy the spice if they force us to it. They won't risk that. Irulan's back to Chom again, Irulan said. Unless someone has managed to duplicate the sand trout sandworm cycle on another planet, Idaho said. He looked speculative at Irulan, excited by this question. Solusa secundus? And here we have Irulan here. My contacts there remain reliable, Irulan said. Not Solusa. Once again, quite confident in that, and she's wrong. Isn't she? So, interestingly, foreshadowing something of perhaps technologies that might nullify the Holtzman effect, who knows? But someone duplicates the sand trout sandworm cycle on another planet, then that's the monopoly on Malaj gone. Bye-bye. And it would fundamentally reshape the universe. And if somebody could recreate it on one planet, why not recreate it on others? I'm sure everybody would have a desire to do that. Might create a complete ecological disaster empire-wide, wouldn't it? So the other thing, unless they manage to duplicate, Chom would risk for this, would they? And I thought, yes, probably they would. Then my answer stands, Alia said, staring at Idaho. We ride with what we have. Let me just catch up with your comments there, folks. House of Windsor, yes, indeed. Was it they're the Saxe Coburg Goethe, isn't it? As the royal family. One last gun could have ended the series. Spoiler alert! I suppose when we get, I'm going to say spoiler alert if we go to a water pistol. A water pistol could do a lot of harm in the Dune universe. Julian Thompson said, "Hey, all, hi Julian, thanks very much for joining us." Christopher Cow says, "A shield and a lasgun interaction is equivalent to atomic, so theirs is the plot convenience. Slow beard beats the shield meets boom." My bad. No worries. Yeah. I never got that. It's a bit like oh no, of course it's to do with the story, isn't it? It's a bit like, you know, how you construct. People have said the same things about. I think there's an interview with J.R. Tolkien, and it's the old why didn't they just the Eagles take the ring and drop it into Mount Doom in the Lord of the Rings? It's the obvious kind of, yeah, why didn't they just do that? You'd have no story. And that's the truth of it. You know, as much as you can consider these things, what's the term? You know, the MacGuffin or whatever. There are things like that. Whenever you, yeah, within this universe, and I think it's deliberate. And especially whenever, again, spoiler alert, whenever the God Emperor comes to his end, that's the moment you realize, bloody hell, anybody could have killed this guy. You know, of all the talk about how to destroy worms, you know, apart from short of a nuclear bomb, I said no. They're very easily. There is a very easy way to destroy all these things. It's quite simple. I think it's very funny. But as I said, if you took that out, you wouldn't necessarily have a good story, would you? You know. And I think certainly the interconnectivity of these various sort of how does Frank sort of put it? It's like the political tripod within the Dune universe is a very unstable, is the most unstable of political structures, is the way he puts it. I think that's because it's based the way he's talking about is based on the American political system, which is a tripod, isn't it? It's a tripartite thing. Pardon me. So yeah, could be the technological tinkerers. Could just be some inventor guy, you know. But again, Alia we'll go with what we have. Pretty much, we'll ride with what we have, and what we have is a certain knowledge throughout the Chom directed that we can destroy the space if they force it upon us. They won't risk it. Back to Chom again, and I said, well, this is the point. Idaho says, unless someone's managed to duplicate the sand-trout sandworm cycle on another planet, such as Celestia, that's the point where I've written, that's where Chom would risk it. And I think if that had become available, and I think the Guild would risk it too, and I think the Bene Gesserit would risk it as well. So we ride with what we have, and we have Idaho's thoughts. My move, Idaho thought. He said, "Why do you drag me away from important work? You could have worked this out yourself." Now, he's being a bit rude here, isn't he? And I actually thought that could have done with an exclamation mark. Frank loves them, doesn't he? Let me just check. I thought it should have one. No, it doesn't. Why did you drag me away from important work? You could have worked this out yourself. Don't take that tone with me. Alia snapped. And this is it's a reveal here, isn't it? Idaho's eyes went wide. For an instant, he'd seen the alien on Alia's face, and it was a disconcerting sight. He turned his attention to Irulan, but she had not seen or gave that appearance. That was kind of what I was speculating on. It seems everybody's seeing this, the Baron in Alia. There should be no reason why Irulan does not see it. Well, certainly with the wee question about where Irulan's presenting, you understand that Alia suspects everybody, including us. I'm wondering, is Irulan being a little bit smarter here than we think? And if she does see the Baron within Alia, she's certainly not giving it away, if that makes sense. She's making no open, facial expression or gesture or shock, any kind of that thing. But Idaho reacted to it. His eyes went wide, but he has those metallic eyes, so maybe it doesn't give him away in that sense. But either she had not seen or gave that appearance, so we don't know if Irulan's noticed or not at this point. Pardon me. I don't need an elementary education, Alia said, her voice still edged with an alien anger. Idaho managed a rueful smile, but his breast ached. We never get far from wealth and all of its masks when we deal with power, Irulan drawled. Paul was a social mutation, and as such, we have to remember that he shifted the old balance of wealth. Pardon me. Now, Alia says this, such mutations are not irreversible. Okay, Alia said, turning away from them as though she'd not exposed her terrible difference. Wherever there's wealth in this empire, they know this. They also know, Irulan said, that there are 3 people who could perpetuate that mutation, the twins and, she pointed at Alia. I'm going to pause there quickly for this is a good point to pause, folks. I'll be right back. I'm just going to nip to the loo, and if you've got any comments or questions, run them down. We've got still a good bit to go yet. I'll be right back. Hello, sorry about that, folks. Supposedly when a laser hits a shield, bad things occur. They do indeed. Yeah. I still love the way the shields, one of my favourite things in David Lynch's Dune was the way the shields were done. I absolutely adored that. I thought it was brilliant. And it makes a lot more sense to have shields like that I think, than the ones that you see in the Denis Villeneuve's version of Dune, or even perhaps the miniseries. I think they're quite similar, aren't they? But you need air. I always thought there's a problem. People putting on shields, just stand there and wait. Let them run out of air. That's it. If you turn the shield off, bang, shoot them. Turn it on, keep it on. Just keep them in a position until they run out of air, and that's them. I suppose sometimes it takes another head to think about problems like that. Little details and stuff, possibilities. No, yes, we're going to get into some fun stuff. I don't know. I quite like this chapter. It's a tricky one, but it is fun. Such mutations like Paul are not irreversible. It creates a shift in power. The shift in power is a shift in wealth as well, and it's an old balance of wealth. In other words, again, remember how long, for example, the Crinos have been on the throne for, and that this is a stagnant universe. It's a universe that's just gone through a lot of change, but it's seemingly up until that point there's been very, very little. So wherever there's wealth in this empire, they know this. And Irulan says they also know, Irulan said, that there are 3 people who could perpetuate this mutation. That mutation, the twins, and she pointed at Alia. And here we go. This is where I thought was a good point to stop. Idaho's thoughts are they insane, this pair? Idaho wondered. Ah, dear. And it's just that one. Are they insane, this pair? And it's including Irulan in this. Idaho wondered. They will try to assassinate me, Alia rasped. And again, I suppose I've just made a wee note here that up until this point in the universe, Canley is part and parcel of being a noble, if you like. It's how they go about murdering and killing each other. There's rules for it, and it's the whole point of it is it's not meant to bring in the little people into it. Because if they did, then lots of little people would get killed, and generally the little people don't like that, I think. But they will try to assassinate me. And again, it's the shifting of where the plot's going. That Alia she thinks it's focused on herself. And Idaho sat in shocked silence, his mental awareness whirling. Assassinate Alia? Why? They could discredit her too easily. They could cut her out of the Fremen pack and hunt her down at will. But the twins? No. He knew he was not in the proper mentat calm for such an assessment, but he had to try. He had to be as precise as possible. At the same time, he knew that precise thinking contained undigested absolutes. Nature was not precise. The universe was not precise when reduced to his scale. And again, I think that's a sort of a comment on the inductive reasoning, if you like. You take the details of the universe and bring it down to come up with a generalization, if you like. It was vague and fuzzy, full of unexpected movements and changes. I don't know. Nature's an interesting thing. Nature's not precise. Don't know. The universe is not precise when reduced to his scale. That's fair enough. It's vague and fuzzy, full of unexpected movements and changes. Humankind as a whole had to be entered into the computation as a natural phenomenon. And the whole process of precise analysis represented a chopping off, a remove from the ongoing current of the universe. He had to get at that current, see it in motion. So I've just made a wee note here that I don't think that the universe and nature are two different things. That they're the same thing. Nature, everything that's in the universe, I think, is natural. And I know we have things that people say, that could only be created in the lab. Therefore, we have no idea what's in the universe yet, So it's an interesting little thing, isn't it? But this is where he's seeing through all of this conspiracies. And again, Alia thinking it's focusing on her, and he's starting to see through it. Now, this is particularly interesting in this chapter. We're going to get some real stuff coming up. We're not too far from the end. We were right to focus on Chom and the Landsrad, Irulan drawled, and Duncan's suggestion offers a first line of inquiry for cut off. Money as a translation of energy can't be separated from the energy it expresses, Alia said. We all know this, but we have to answer three specific questions. When, using what weapons, and where? And Idaho's thoughts here are the twins. The twins. It's the twins. The twins. The twins, Idaho thought. It's the twins who are in danger, not Alia. And he's got it. Money is a translation of energy. Can't be separated from the energy it expresses. That's an interesting little statement, isn't it? Money is a translation of energy. Money is an abstract. It's a system. A translation of energy, perhaps. I can see where he's thinking with that, I think. We all know this, but we have to answer specific questions. So I think she's more talking specifically about the transference of wealth within the empire there and how that will apply to sort of new power structures, etc. But what she wants to know is when, using what weapons, and where. What would be a lot better to know, I suppose, is who. Because as much as what Idaho is saying there, if I knew that someone was, if someone's going to try to kill you, try to assassinate you, plot to kill you, there's very little you can do about what they're going to do. I suppose it's how you sort of look after yourself, how you protect yourself, how you defend yourself, how, if you like, vary your routes, for example, when you go to work or school, this kind of thing. But sooner they will have a go. There's very little you can do to stop such a thing, except for when it happens. But if you can preempt it, if you can identify it, if I knew that someone was coming to kill me, I'd take them out before they got here. It's as simple as that. And I wouldn't care what the repercussions were, because the alternatives are pretty bad. To be honest with you, you would be dead. But he's got the focus here. So what Alia thinks is that I'm the target. When are they coming for me? What weapons are they going to use, and where? This is assassins that she's obviously referring to, of some type. But Idaho's got it here. His thoughts is the twins that are in danger, and he's correct. Irulan says, "You're not interested in who or how?" Irulan asked, as I was saying, it should be a who, what, where, why, when, and how. If you really want to run through a problem, ask all of those questions. This is Alia's response. If House Carino or Chom or any other group employs human instruments on this planet, Alia said, we stand a better than 60% chance of finding them before they act. Knowing when they'll act and where gives us a better leverage on these odds. How? That's just asking what weapons. And Idaho's thoughts here, why can't they see it as I see it? Idaho wondered. So, interesting enough, if it's House Queen or Chom or any other group employs human instruments, again, that's human beings as tools, if you like, is the way I looked at that. There's no need to put the word instrument in there, I think. That's very deliberate. Better leverage on those. That's just what happens. Why can't they see it as I see it? Idaho wondered. All right, Irulan said. When? So they're running the problem here. When attention is focused on someone else, Alia said. Attention was focused on your mother at the convocation, Irulan said. There was no attempt. Wrong place, Alia said. And Idaho's thoughts are, what is she doing? Idaho wondered. Where then? Irulan asked. Right here in the keep, Alia said. It's the place where I'd feel most secure and least on my guard. Okay, what weapons? Irulan asked. Conventional. Something a Fremen might have on his person. Poisoned crysknife, maul a pistol and again cut off. But Irulan, they've not tried a hunter-seeker in a long while, Irulan said. I've just made a wee comment up here at the top of the page, just that I was having a look. This is 2025, just to jump off for a wee second, folks. 1st of August this year is the 60th anniversary of Dune, publication as a book. And on the 8th of August, well, it'll be the 105th birthday of Frank Herbert. But I was just going, it's the 60th anniversary of Dune this year. We'll definitely have to do something special on the 1st of August. It's actually my mother and father's anniversary. So it's not likely that I'm going to forget it. That's going to be interesting. So Irulan's throwing out options here. I love this bit in the book. It's going to get silly. Conventional weapons, Mala pistols, poison crystal. Oh, okay. Haven't tried a hunter seeker in a while. Oh, it's good. Wouldn't work in a crowd, Alia said. There'll have to be a crowd. Now, I wondered, what does she mean by this? If the suggestion is that someone might try a hunter seeker, they wouldn't try it in a crowd. Is what she says there'll have to be a crowd? Is that to create human shields to prevent a hunter seeker being used? That's kind of what I got from it. Wouldn't work in a crowd, Alia said. There'll have to be a crowd. that suggests, that, or at least having a lot of people around is a way of making sure that doesn't happen. I don't think that's the case at all. There's no sniper or bomber that's ever gone after someone and worried about a crowd. In fact, a crowd would actually be beneficial to an assassin in terms of getting away. That you could blend in. I don't think the thinking's good here. Here we go with Irulan again. Biological weapon? Irulan asked. An infectious agent? Alia asked, not masking her incredulity. And here we get her thoughts. And this is interesting. How could Irulan think an infectious agent would succeed against the immunological barriers which protected an Atreides? But what does that mean? And what do we mean by barriers? I'd love to know what you guys think about this one. So I don't think it's any kind of physical barrier, like a shield or anything. Immunological barrier, which protected an Atreides. Is this a byproduct of the breeding program? Is this a byproduct of Kwisatz Haderach or that kind of thing? I don't know, but basically saying if they dropped in a biological weapon, she'd be fine, is what I get from that. And she's saying protected an Atreides. Is it? I don't know. I'm not too sure about that. Because I think a biological or even a chemical weapon would be useful. But seemingly it would have to something you would have to rule out. But I've just written, what does this mean? I'm not too sure. Here we go. This is my favorite bit here. I was thinking more in the line of some animal, Irulan said. A small pet, say, trained to bite a specific victim, inflicting a poison with its bite. Now, she's actually right in her thinking, in a way, but it's not going to be a small furry animal, is it? A small pet. It'll be big Lhasa tigers. Pardon me. Now, she's right in a way, but not as small or poisonous. So here we go. The house ferrets will prevent that, Alia said. One of them, then? Irulan asked. Couldn't be done. The house ferrets would reject an outsider. Kill it. You know that. I was just exploring possibilities in the hope that I'll alert my guards, Alia said. And probably the house ferrets too. There's more to do with ferrets yet. So we've never had a mention of these ferrets before. And I just think it's quite funny. And it's also kind of an animal that we've not heard mentioned that's been able to do well on Arrakis. Not is this a new import? We never heard about House Atreides bringing their ferrets with them to Arrakis. We've gone through the whole Arrakis affair. Paul becomes emperor. Didn't hear about any ferrets there, but at some point, and I was trying to imagine this little cadre of ferrets within Dune. It's a bit random, this, isn't it? That's why I sort of asked, is Frank having a moment in the title thing today? Excuse me, let me get some fluids here. I actually was one again with Idaho going, are these two insane? I was just exploring possibilities in the hope that I'll alert my guards, Alia said. As Alia said, guards, Idaho put a hand over his actually eyes. I would have put my hand over the eyes with the ferrets, trying to prevent the demanding involvement which swept over him. It was Ragia, the movement of infinity as expressed by life, the latent cup of total immersion in mentat awareness, which lay in wait for every mentat. It threw his awareness onto the universe like a net, falling, defining the shapes within it. This is all very important. That simile there, like a net, we'll come back. He saw the twins crouching in darkness while giant claws raked the air about them. No, he whispered. What? Alia looked at him as though surprised to find him still there. He took his hands away from his eyes. Now, I'll just stop and jump back here a wee second before we go further. Now, first of all, Ragia, etymologically speaking, I've got nothing there with that spelling, but if you drop the H, Raja is a Muslim girl's name. It has a number of different meanings that I could find anyway. Hopeful, hope, expectation, wish, what's that? Content, satisfied, hoping. I've also got Raja as the referrer there, but that hopeful, hope, expectation, wish, content. It's my bad, very tiny handwriting. Content, satisfied, that kind of thing. Now, I don't think that has any particular. That's all I can find on it. The movement. It was Raja. The movement of infinity is expressed by life. Okay, the latent cup of total immersion in mentat awareness, which lay in wait for every mentat. It threw his awareness onto the universe like a net, falling, defining the shapes within it. Now, that net thing, his awareness onto the universe like a net, is really important. And unfortunately, we're not going to get to that to another 3 books. We've had a wee bit of a chat about the net and what it means. And hang on, let's see. We've got a few. Just say this is Indra's net, right? Okay. Now let's have a look at this. I don't know this one. Thank you, Julian. Indra's net, also called Indra's jewels or Indra's pearls, is a metaphor used to illustrate the concepts of sunyata or emptiness, pratityasamutpada, dependent origination, and interpenetration in Buddhist philosophy. The metaphor's earliest known reference is found in the Atharva Veda. It was further developed by the Mahayana school in the 3rd century Buddhavatamsaka Sutra, and later by the Huayan school between the 6th and 8th centuries. Now, this is really interesting. Thank you, Julian. Julian's been doing some more modern work on Dune. Indra's net. I'm going to take a good look into this. Excellent. Oh, it's good for me to learn stuff. Right, Indra's net is an infinitely large net owned by the Vedic Devra Indra, which hangs over his palace on Mount Meru, the axis mundi of Buddhist and Hindu cosmology. Pardon me. In East Asian Buddhism, Indra's net is considered as having a multifaceted jewel at each vertex, with each jewel being reflected in all of the other jewels. In the Huayan school of Chinese Buddhism, is it Huayan? Possibly, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, which follows the Buddhist. Here we go. Buddhavatamsaka Sutra. The image of Indra's net is used to describe the interconnectedness or perfect interfusion, of all phenomena in the universe. That's very interesting. Modern. Let's just have. I'm just gonna. So there's. Yeah, check that out on Wikipedia, folks. I'm gonna have a good read at this. Just modern Western. Vermeer's hat. Good. Do we have any reference to Frank here? Brave New World. Oh, so some sort of modern. I don't know. There's a 2020 TV series of Brave New World. Grant Morrison named this. Oh, Grant Morrison. I'll have to see if I can find that. Named this network after the Vedic deity since Huxley was famously fascinated by Indian mysticism, named another element of the story Soma after a Hindu ritual drink which shares its name with another Vedic deity. Interesting, redefining Hinduism for the night gospel. Very good. Thank you, Julian. I used to go and I used to say I was always curious about the net. That there's much because of the Atreides story that there are nets involved in that as well. Particularly with how Agamemnon dies, we were having a wee chat, but that makes a lot more sense to me. Indra's net, excellent, something to have a wee bit of research into. Thank you, Julian. It's beautiful in Chapter House. This has been that long since I've been near this stuff, but I often thought about the net in terms of in relating it to the Atreides. How Agamemnon's killed is either with a net shirt with no sleeves, or there's a net dropped on him. I often wondered, because we were looking at the Atreides myth within the Dune series, that often thought that ultimately where would the Dune series have gone? And I thought that ultimately would head towards a similar conclusion to the end of the Atreides myth, if you like, and as presented in things like the Oresteia, But that's brilliant. Hang on, I need to get a highlighter for that. It needs a purple one. Oh, hang on, not that much purple on this one, but yes, indeed. And this is important for later. But Indra's net, I'm going to have a good wee read of that. Thank you so much, Julian. That's brilliant. Julian, I don't know if you're on at the start there, but I was saying to everybody at the beginning, anybody who's wanting to sort of have a chat with me, etc., we'll have a wee natter with you and talk about your work. I was just giving times that I'm available to everybody. So if anybody does want to have a natter with me, on Zoom and stuff, send me a time and date, and I'll let you know if I can make it. But basically, if it's the times that I can't make it in the week are between 3 p.m. and 9 p.m. Monday to Friday, and I wouldn't be able to do the Tuesday because I'm doing this. But if you want to have anybody wants to have a Zoom chat with me about Dune, sci-fi, whatever, a bunch of you have sort of asked. That's the time frame that I'm available. So I'm not available within 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. GMT because those are my teaching hours. But anybody else wants to chat, Julian, yourself, fire me a date and time and we'll sort it out. But thank you so much for that. Thank you. Brilliant. Indra's net, folks, check it out. Just to let we know, what we're talking about here is actually at the very end of it's to do with the net and our very last Duncan Idaho at the end of the Dune series. Spoiler alert, etc. It's to do. I'm not really giving it. It's to do with Daniel and Marty, etc. It's a very interesting thing. We're getting it laid here. We're getting the foundations of this laid here, and also, so as much as I'm going on about the net and brilliant, Julian, we've got another thing here that we have to deal with, which is Duncan Idaho is saying something here. He saw the twins crouching in darkness with giant claws raked the air about them. Question is, how? Now, this is very interesting. Is Duncan prescient here? Now, we'll go on with it. He saw the twins crouching in darkness while giant claws raked the air about them. No, he whispered. What? Alia looked at him, as though surprised to find him still there. He took his hands from his eyes. The garments that House Carino sent, he asked, have they been sent on to the twins? Of course, Irulan said. They're perfectly safe. Once again, no. No, they're not. No one's going to try for the twins at Siege Tabar, Alia said. Not with all those Stilgar trained guards around. Idaho stared at her. He had no particular datum to reinforce an argument based on Mentat computations, but he knew this thing he'd experienced came very close to the visionary power which Paul had known. I've written wow next to that. And the strange thing for me is the next sentence. Neither Irulan nor Alia would believe it coming from him. Now, this is huge. Close to prescience, very close to the visionary power which Paul had known. Wow, okay, but close, but no cigar, but just close. So there's something interesting happening with Idaho here. It's not his Mentat computations that have got. Possibly it's part of it, but it's a vision, is it? He sees this. He saw the twins crouching. But how this happens, he's trying to prevent the demanding involvement which swept over him. The movement of infinity is expressed by life. The latent cup of total immersion in Mentat awareness, which lay in wait for every Mentat, threw his awareness onto the universe like a net, falling, defining the shapes within it. He saw the twins crouching in darkness while giant claws raked the air. And that his next words are a response. No, you know. Now, what's really interesting, and I'm kind of curious about this, is that neither Irulan nor Alia would believe it coming from him. And I've written, why not? There's lots of prescient people in this universe. Loads of them. And that there are levels of prescience. And particularly, I think we see this with how the Bene Gesserit modeled everything for the prescient with the Dune Tarot and Dune Messiah. But there we go. He's seen it. It's a hugely important moment, this in the book, I think. And it's actually stuff like this that's making me go, I'm actually so happy I'm going through these books one last time and making these notes. It's little things that you might miss or that you notice when you read them way back, but just in terms of how my old head works, this is pretty important stuff here. Very interesting. Why wouldn't they believe him? Why doesn't he even try? What's the harm? And and especially if they're, in a sense, to trust his Mentat computations, would they be that disbelieving of Duncan Idaho? But he's pretty much got it sauced. It's the clothes. It's not going to be a small furry animal. It's going to be big teeth. And of course, the house ferrets aren't going to be much use there, are they? Let's see. So the garments that House Croon sent. Yes. Let's see. Yeah. I'd like to alert the port authorities against allowing the importation of any outside animals, he said. Pardon me. You're not taking Irulan's suggestions seriously, Alia protested. Why take any chances, he asked. Tell that to the smugglers, Alia said. I'll put my dependence on the house ferrets. Oh dear. I've written next that, just laughing out loud, and then I've written next that she's mental. She's got mad. And I suppose Idaho shook his head. I would too. What could house ferrets do against claws the size of those envisioned? But Alia was right. The whole ferret thing is making me giggle quite a lot. I'm sorry if I'm being a bit silly about it, but dependency is not a good thing in the Dune universe, is it? I'll put my dependence on the house ferrets. There you go. Sentences you never thought you'd say out loud in your life, but actually sentences somebody actually wrote. Dear oh dear. What could the house ferrets do against claws the size of those envisioned? I don't know. Could be were ferrets. I'm thinking kind of a Monty Python type Holy Grail. It's just a ferret. Yeah. Dear. Did anybody ever used to read White Dwarf? magazine a long time. I used to read it a long time ago. I used to have I was at Thrud the Barbarian. It was quite good. But there was a were hamster in that story. That was very funny. Just made me think of it. Ferrets, yes, indeed. Ferrets in this country was associated with Yorkshiremen and all this kind of thing. Bit icky thump, that kind of thing. But yes, it's a bizarre thing. And again, I think she's not to be taking the piss out of this too much. Hang on, sorry, I'm just going to I've got to bookmark this page here. It's Indra's Net. I'll put it into my Dune folder. There we go. Before I close that down. What was I saying there? Yeah, I think, sorry, in all honesty, I think what's happening here is that she's still running with the fact that it could be a small furry animal. As opposed to the big animal that Duncan has envisaged. Of course, we know this is the Laza tigers, don't we? But again, that means that Duncan Idaho's vision is correct here. He hasn't got a full-on detailed look, but it's almost like a visual impression, isn't it? And it is correct. They've got things right. Some of them in this. Irulan thinking it could be more in the line of some animal. She is correct. And it's possibly the combination of these things that have sort of prodded Idaho's thoughts, his awareness to do this. But we get the strong sense, by the way, that this is not a normal Mentat computation. This is not what normally happens to a Mentat. The expressed immersion in Mentat awareness, total, which lay in wait for every Mentat. Fair enough, but it threw his awareness onto the universe like a net. That bit, I think, is different than what it is. The usual Mentat process, if you see what I mean. And yes, indeed, it's something to pay careful attention to, is the net. But Indra's Net, brilliant, Julian, thank you. Let's see. It's going to alert the partner. Thought you're not taking his suggestion. Why take any chances? So, what could house ferrets do against claws the size of those envisioned? But Alia was right. Bribes in the right places, one acquiescent guild navigator, and any place in the empty quarter became a landing port. The guild would resist a front position in any attack on House Atreides, but if the price were high enough, well, the guild could only be thought of as something like a geological barrier which made attacks difficult but not impossible. They could always protest that they were just a transportation agency. How could they know to what use a particular cargo would be put? Fair enough. And again, that's what the guild would hide behind. They can be involved in this conspiracy. They can land the animals in their control, etc. If there's a control, I can't remember if there's a controller on the planet, but just the tigers. And then go, well, how do we know what that was to be used for? It's not our fault. Gives them deniability. Alia broke the silence with a purely Fremen gesture. A raised fist with the thumb horizontal. I was wondering, was it like that or like that? But that's very sore for me to do. But there we go. Raised fist, symbol of power. Thumb horizontal. She accompanied the gesture with a traditional expletive, which meant, I give typhoon conflict. And again, the typhoon struggle that's predicted. I think it's an interesting way of putting it. Pardon me, and we get a bit of an explanation of it. She obviously saw herself as the only logical target for assassins. And the gesture protested a universe full of undigested threats. It's like a lot of you, excuse my friend, that kind of thing. The typhoon, I give typhoon conflict. She was saying that she would hurl the death wind at anyone who attacked her. So in other words, if you're coming for me, it's all out. I'll bring full-on death to the death wind. So the typhoon conflict, we'll hear Kralazek, the typhoon struggle, as we move down the Dune series. Paraphrasing it, the death wind, if you like, at anyone who attacked her. And it's hers. She would hurl the death wind at anyone who attacked her. Idaho felt the hopelessness of any protest. He saw that she no longer suspected him. He was going back to Tabar, and she expected a perfect, hang on, sorry, my handwriting, a perfect abduction of the Lady Jessica. I just need to check that. Did I write that down correctly? Perfectly, I've left out a word, sorry. Perfectly executed abduction. That's why it's okay. Executed abduction of the Lady Jessica, who she considers a conspirator. He lifted himself from the divan in an adrenaline surge of anger, thinking, if only Alia were the target, if only assassins could get to her. For an instant, he rested his hand on his knife, his own knife, but it was not in him to do this. She's his wife. I think that's really good. This man's a stone cold killer. He can't kill her. He can't do it. And it's a good insight into his character, isn't it? For an instant, he rested his hand on his own knife, but it was not in him to do this. Far better, though, that she die a martyr than live to be discredited and hounded into a sandy grave. That's kind of, it reminded me on the perception of the Atreides, if you like, both for themselves and for others. Particularly in Dune Messiah, they're very concerned with how other people see them, I think. Part and parcel of politics and, that kind of thing. And it's interesting that they are that concerned with how others look at them. Better that she die a martyr, killed in a way that makes her look like a martyr rather than to be discredited and hounded into the grave. Both, she's dead in both, but one's preferable to the other, I suppose. But yeah, I think he'd be very happy to let assassins kill her just to put an end to this, the alien possession of his wife. But the fact that he couldn't kill her, and that's part of the, I suppose, going to become part of the plot, I think, within the rest of the book. Yes, Alia said, misinterpreting his expression as concern for her. You best hurry back to Tabar. And she thought, how foolish of me to suspect Duncan. He's mine, not Jessica's. And again, I suppose Duncan's figured out why she's suspicious of him. It's because he used to be her bodyguard, pretty much. It has been the demand from the tribes that had upset her, Alia thought. There's a wee bit in the book there, but I've just written that that's not in italics, and I thought it should be. And she thought, how foolish of me to suspect Duncan, exclamation mark, he's mine, not Jessica's, exclamation mark. That's in italics because it's her thoughts. It had been the demand from the tribes that upset her, Alia thought. That's also her thoughts. So that should be in italics. But it's not in my copy for some reason. So, it's a bit of a funny thing. Generally, the thoughts are presented in italics. Pardon me. When I write characters' thoughts in the book, you probably hear me say there's Idaho's thoughts, etc. What I actually do, just to show, is to make sure that I separate them from dialogue. That I will actually say this is Idaho's thoughts, and I do put quotation marks around them. Just it's for my own benefit. But I separate out characters' thoughts from dialogue, for my own benefit in the book. But that's why you often go, you hear me go, here's Idaho's thoughts. But I almost kind of write it in some ways, sometimes like I was doing a script, if you see. So that's Alia talking, and then she thought, and I separate them. So it was just something I noticed, Pardon me. Being the demand for the tribes that had upset her, Alia thought. That's been the problem. She waved an airy goodbye, and then she waved an airy goodbye to Idaho as she left. Idaho left. The other thing, by the way, is we don't get a goodbye for Irulan here. The two of them leave, and Irulan's just left hanging, which I thought was a bit odd for a writer to do. There's 3 characters in this room. 2 of them depart, and we don't mention the third. Idaho left the council chamber feeling hopeless. Not only was Alia blind with her alien possession, but she became more insane with each crisis. She'd already passed her danger point and was doomed. But what could be done for the twins? Whom could he convince? Stilgar. And what could Stilgar do that he wasn't already doing. We have a bit of foreshadowing in what we've just said there. I'll not spoil it for anyone, but there is foreshadowing here with this question. Idaho's thoughts then. The Lady Jessica then. Yes, he'd explore that possibility, but she too might be far gone in plotting with her sisterhood. He carried few illusions about that Atreides concubine. She might do anything at the command of the Bene Gesserits, even turn against her own grandchildren. So feeling hopeless, it's a bad end here for Duncan. He's feeling a bit hopeless. Who do I trust? What, can I trust Stilgar? Can I trust Lady Jessica? It's a great, it's a good chapter. This that's us at the end of the chapter. By the way, I've just written here that Alia no longer suspects Duncan. Does Duncan suspect Jessica? Who to trust? And does Alia still suspect Irulan here? But I'll catch up with your comments. Julian said this is a big chapter for Duncan. Indeed, it is. We see this natural, different prescience which Leto Tanax will cultivate with many lives. This is also the first romantic tragedy we see on the page for him. Yeah, it's heartbreaking. And there's the point where he's considering killing his wife here, but he is a killer, but he can't do it. It's not in him to do this, and it's good to know a character like that it isn't in him to do things like that. Even when there's a perfect, and we have a justification for it. But yes, it's a big chapter for Duncan. I think it's a great chapter. It's a bit kooky as well, and just that whole I'll depend on the House Ferrets and stuff. I was actually saying the wee thing. I said, I wonder is Frank having a bit of a moment here. Ferrets and stuff like that are used, would have been used in castles and stuff for catching vermin and things like that. I didn't really start looking into ferrets particularly. Let's just have a quick look. They're gorgeous, aren't they? The ferret was still a furrow. Let's see, characteristic of the history of domestication, ferreting. Hunting and ferreting, blah, blah, blah. As the Romans control rabbit. Let's see, that's quite interesting. Roman historians Pliny and Strabo record that Caesar Augustus sent Vivarais from Libya to the Balearic Islands to control rabbit plagues there in 6 BC. It is speculated that Vivarais could refer to ferrets, mongooses, or polecats. In England in 1390, a law was enacted restricting the use of ferrets for hunting to the relatively wealthy. There you go. Yeah, it used to be a kind of a comedy thing in this country. Yorkshiremen and their ferrets, this kind of thing. Ferreting. But yeah, I didn't think a ferret would do particularly well. That's import restrictions. Ferrets cannot be imported into Australia. A report drafted in August 2 that seems to be the only effort made to date to change the situation. Ferrets brought from anywhere to Canada, yes, require a permit to be imported into Canada, the EU. Cats, dogs, and ferrets can travel freely within the EU under the pet passport scheme. New Zealand has banned the imports of ferrets. The UK accepts ferrets. Ferrets must be microchipped and vaccinated against rabies and documented. Must be treated for ticks and tapeworms 24 to 48 hours before entry. They must also arrive via an unauthorized route. Ferrets arriving from outside the EU may be subject to a 6-month quarantine. So there you go. Just an amusing little thing, I thought. Very good. And there's some good writing in this chapter as well. But yeah, it's, as Julian says, it's a big chapter for Duncan. There's a moment of transition here, moment of change. Something's happened to Duncan. This is our Duncan Idaho hate Gola, if you like. But certainly close to prescience. We're told very close to the visionary power which Paul had known. Paul Atreides, the Kwisatz Haderach. Wow. Okay. And how has this happened? And it's a wee bit. Irulan and Alia just do seem like a pair. They just seem a bit nutty at some point. Irulan's certainty, I think, of certain things. I don't know how much of it's fake or true, and whether Irulan can see the Baron in Alia, and is she aware? Is she hiding it? Because Duncan's not sure. Did she see it, or is she ignoring it and pretending that she didn't see it? This kind of thing. But certainly, for going down the road, this is a really important chapter. I think, just in terms of where the story will ultimately go with Duncan's character in particular. Questions about presence. We're getting a lot of things set up about the fringe worlds here as well. A shift of wealth, a shift of power, a shift of technology. The fringe worlds, the outer edges of the empire, not considered part of the empire, I think. So again, when we get to sort of the warnings from the Dune God Emperor, and eventually head down towards the end of the books, but especially some of the stuff on how the Dune series is left hanging because of Frank Herbert's death, there's a lot of, I think there's payoff, and a lot of payoff from this chapter on down the road, and it's very interesting to see. As I said, I haven't Children of Dune been a while for me, and in terms of my research, certain books, because when I was doing the PhD, I had to chuck half of it. I did it in order of, I did it themes. So particular focuses on certain things. And I didn't have enough room to particularly, did a little bit about Duncan Idaho and the last Duncan Idaho. The hate goal, but there's so much here, but it's I just find this, oh wow, this is interesting. And again, my old memories, I have a good memory, but it's been that long. You don't remember every little word in a book, do you? I find this chapter really interesting, and I did have a good laugh at the ferrets, But and big thank you to Julian. That's a big clue to this. The net is Indra's net. Is that correct? Did I read it? Indra's net. Yes. As I said, I'd often thought, I speculated about it, Julian, but I didn't really know. But it's because I haven't got to the last book again. But we were talking about some of the stuff to do with nets with the Atreides, and I was kind of wondering, what's the net all about? But it's right there. Well, thank you very much. That's good stuff. Cynthia saying, Duncan appears to be driven to his moment of vision by repeatedly setting aside his emotions for Alia. I'm reminded of his overcoming the condition against Paul that brought his memories back. In other words, as before, a crisis brings Duncan to a new level of awareness. And it's the constant shifting into the mentat, isn't it? To avoid dealing with the pain of Alia, that he's happy to go through, and something happens there. But as you say, a crisis. And he's even almost, the adrenaline surge of anger, his hand is on his own knife for an instant. It's the contemplation of killing his wife, isn't it? But he can't do it. It's not in him. It's, as you say, it's first erotic tragedy we see on the page from. It's really harsh, isn't it? To see your wife, taken over by an alien possession, if you like, that she's going mad. And is there anything of her personality going to remain at the end? This kind of thing. It is the real stuff of tragedy, isn't it? And it's the thing I have, I suppose, is that Alia would be a favorite character of mine, and Alia is a character that I'm very sympathetic towards. Again, how we see her in Dune, how we see her in Dune Messiah. This is the last book we'll see her in, but it's a hell of a character arc, isn't it? And it's absolutely. And again, that crisis bringing Duncan to a new level of awareness. That's kind of again, I suppose, can we ask, is he becoming a Kwisatz Haderach here? Because it is that crisis point, isn't it, that kind of creates them. But it's tantalizing, isn't it? It's so close. Where is it? But so close to what Paul has. Or has, sorry. Oh, here, I've jumped all the way back here. Let me just jump all the way forward again. The thing he'd experienced came very close to the visionary power which Paul had known. What my wee comment next to that is, wow. That's impressive. The only thing I thought, How kooky is Irulan from hanging around with Alia? Perhaps is that it? I don't know. Irulan seems. I'm kind of finding it hard to put a finger on Irulan in this chapter. Is she being deceptive or not? I suppose. Is she being how naive is she? And it would, and how deceptive is she being? What does she really know? The suggestion within the passage is that whatever contacts that Irulan has on Solus Secundus are not reliable anymore. She's too trusting of her own family. She's pretty much, apart from the animal, she's pretty much incorrect about everything. You know, and her language is quite straightforward and almost dismissive. I think, you know, oh no, that wouldn't happen. My contacts there remain reliable, not Solus. Just like that, you know. And we do get a hint of her haughtiness, as it's often put within this chapter as well. The sneers, there's a lot of sneering going on and stuff like that. People making demands, I suppose. It's an interesting chapter. It's well put together. There's some lovely writing in it, but it's a strange one to read. It's a very strange chapter for me to make notes on. I have to say, it just felt weird, and I thought, okay, Frank's had a few drug experiences. Is this one? Is this one of them? You know, but it's explained a little bit more of the universe, I suppose, within the dependencies and reliabilities of trade, commerce, how melange is used. And again, I thought it's very interesting. It mentions who uses melange. More important is who doesn't. I think, and we've often discussed this. I think we've asked this question. Such a wonderfully ubiquitous drug, and it has so many uses. Is it out of the reach of the poor? In the Dune universe, pretty much, I think, is the case. It's not out of the reach of the rich, and it's not out of the reach of the vast middle classes, we're told. Well, if your middle class is vast, your lower class, your working class is going to be much, much bigger. You know, and we have to assume that the working class is a large part of the labor force within this universe, especially if we don't have thinking machines and stuff like that. But yes, there's a lot of suggestions, some foreshadowing. And I think, yeah, it's a very interesting chapter. Next one's not going to be so long. And law and governance. But yes, indeed, we're starting. I'd say we're just crossed about a third of the way through the book. I think we're heading towards halfway, possibly. I'm up to page 154. No, yeah. We're heading towards the halfway mark, I think. So there we go, folks. Fantastic wee chapter. Yeah. And in other words, before crisis brings Duncan to a new level of awareness. Yes, indeed. I think it's a very interesting chapter, and we can see the suspicions within the characters, what they each think the others are thinking, you know, and it's one of those things that they're not exactly correct, are they? You know. Well, listen, folks, there we go. Let's just go on 102. That's the 8th of January 2025. I think I will call it a day there. Or early morning, isn't it? We're just into the 3. That was one of our slightly bigger chapters there. So I'd just like to thank you all very much as always. We'll be back with the next chapter on Tuesday at 10 o'clock, same time. Thank you, Cynthia. Thanks for your work, Doc. As always, you're more than welcome, folks. And as I said, for any of those that didn't catch it, if anybody does want to have one of those wee chats with me through Zoom or anything like that, I'm not available 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. Monday to Friday. Outside of those times, GMT, outside of those times, a few of you sort of expressed interest. If you want to send me an email, give me a date of time. We'll try and organize a wee Zoom chat. So yeah, thank you very much as always, folks. There's Christopher saying good night, Doc. Thank you, and good night, folks. Look after yourselves as always, and looking forward to the next chapter. And I've got to say one other thing. I think this chapter invigorated me. I've been getting it's a bit of a slog sometimes, this for me. It invigorated my interest in the Dune series, this chapter, more probably than any other. I was just, I really enjoyed reading it. Probably not for the same reasons as yourselves, but I can be a bit silly sometimes. So listen, folks, look after yourselves. Thank you very much as always. Look forward to seeing you all next time. And I said, chuck me a wee email if anybody wants to do that chat at some point. So look after yourselves. Take care, and we'll see you next week at 10 p.m. GMT for our next chapter. All the best. Good night. Bye bye. Good night, Doc. Take it easy, Julian. Bye bye.